Chapter 494. After the great tribulation of heaven and earth, the number of worlds formed in the untainted land reached 296 billion. However, although there were many of them, they were extremely rare when they were scattered across the entire untainted land. Moreover, because these worlds were originally a complete part of the untainted land, they existed perfectly in the untainted land. Unless one had an extremely deep understanding of the untainted land, it would be extremely difficult to find them. Because of this, Lei Jiuxiao's Thunderbolt Cave was hidden more than 3,000 li above the Spirit Sea. However, even the Heavenly Thunderman Elder, who was able to create the Thunderbolt Son of Heaven's cultivation method, did not notice its existence. This allowed Lei Jiuxiao to have more than 1,000 years of peace and quiet. After painstakingly cultivating for more than 1,000 years without any progress, Lei Jiuxiao could not help but want to travel. He immediately said to Lei Zhen, "I heard that you Heavenly Thundermen created the Thunderbolt Son of Heaven's cultivation method. I wonder what price I have to pay to learn it." When Lei Zhen and the others heard this, they could not help but be pleasantly surprised. Although Lei Jiuxiao had not done anything spectacular in the untainted land, he had a master who was revered as a Tao master by the entire untainted land. This gave him an extremely transcendent status. Lei Jiuxiao, who had such a high status and the inheritance of a Tao master, was actually interested in their cultivation method. This was extremely great encouragement to them. This proved that the Thunderbolt Son of Heaven's cultivation method, in Lei Jiuxiao's opinion, should at least be considered exquisite. How could they not be pleasantly surprised and excited? After the pleasant surprise and excitement, Lei Zhen scratched his head. After thinking for a while, Lei Zhen said, "Senior, you have seen the Thunderbolt Son of Heaven's cultivation method, so I should offer it to you with both hands. However, although I am a true disciple of the Thunderbolt Son of Heaven, I have no right to give the supreme cultivation method of the Thunderbolt Son of Heaven to outsiders. If you really want this cultivation method, you have to discuss it with the sect master." "I see. Then why don't you send someone to take me to your sect master?" Lei Jiuxiao had already expected Lei Zhen's answer. He smiled and said. Hearing Lei Jiuxiao's words, Lei Zhen hurriedly said, "There is no need for that. We also have a dojo in the virtual world. If Senior is interested, you can directly enter the virtual world and contact our sect master. There is no need for you to personally go to our mountain." "That's not appropriate at all. How can I not go there personally to ask for cultivation methods from the higher-ups?" Lei Jiuxiao chuckled. Hearing this, Lei Zhen frowned slightly. However, he had already cultivated the body of the Lightning Son of Heaven after all, and was equivalent to a rogue immortal realm cultivator, so he naturally had his own decision. Thus, he immediately said, "Since Senior has such a wish, I will naturally comply." Lei Zhen was a true disciple, and his status was far higher than the other inner disciples. It could even be said that he controlled the life and death of these inner disciples. Under such circumstances, Lei Zhen naturally did not need to consider the opinions of the other inner men disciples when he made his decision. Fortunately, these inner disciples were in complete agreement with Lei Zhen's decision. Thus, there was no disagreement. Lei Jiuxiao could tell from their expressions that they didn't know what was going on. Thus, he didn't ask any more questions. He merely chuckled and waved his hand. The void distorted and brought Lei Zhen and the others out of the lightning cave. They once again appeared in the sky, 3,000 miles above the spiritual sea. Although Lei Zhen and the others were extremely interested in the lightning cave and wanted to stay in it for a while longer, it was still Lei Jiuxiao's residence. How long they could stay would naturally depend on Lei Jiuxiao's wishes. Hence, it was not appropriate for them to say anything. At this moment, a large flock of strange birds with heads like infants, 6 wings, and 9 tails appeared nearby. It was obvious that they were migrating. The moment Lei Jiuxiao and the others appeared, these strange birds were attracted by their aura and instantly discovered them. Their cries, which sounded like the cries of infants, surged towards them. "These are hidden infants." The 5 inner disciples couldn't help but exclaim when they saw this flock of strange birds. These strange birds were one of the 8 great connate lightning beasts, the hidden infants. If it was only a hidden, nascent soul, these inner disciples naturally wouldn't pay any attention to it. Even the weakest inner disciple here could easily kill it. But at this moment, there were more than 100,000 hidden nascent soul cultivators. When such a large flock flew over, it was like a cloud that blotted out the sky. The shock was unimaginable. Lei Jun frowned when he heard their exclamations and said, "It's just a flock of connate lightning beasts. Why are you making such a fuss? You're still far from being promoted to a true disciple." Even Lei Jun wasn't moved by this, let alone Lei Jiuxiao. Although there were 100,000 hidden infants, Lei Jiuxiao's expression didn't change at all. He merely watched with a smile and had no intention of making a move. Lei Jiuxiao did not move. Knowing that Lei Jiuxiao wanted to see what he was capable of, Xiao Chun did not hesitate. Boundless lightning appeared out of thin air, instantly forming a seal the size of a fist. The seal looked very simple and unadorned, as if it had been born along with the heavens and earth. It was a mysterious existence that had been carved over a long period of time. After the seal was formed, it exuded an indescribable aura. The space that this aura passed through seemed to be controlled by an indescribable will. It was as if it had been completely separated from the untainted world and formed a world that was controlled by the seal. This seal was a kind of magical power that came with the body of the Lightning Emperor, the Heaven Seal. It was the same quality as the Emperor's throne that Lei Jun had. After the Heaven Seal appeared, the large flock of hidden infants froze for a moment. It was as if they had suddenly seen a supreme existence that had a natural suppressive force on them. They were instantly stunned. Lei Jun waved his hand, and the Heaven's Seal flew forward. It expanded in the wind and turned into a huge seal with a circumference of 100,000 zhong and the size of a mountain in the blink of an eye. At the same time, the engravings at the bottom of the seal became extremely conspicuous because of its enlargement. It also emitted boundless lightning, as if it was going to destroy the void at the same time. The engravings at the bottom of the seal also became extremely conspicuous because of its enlargement. It also emitted boundless lightning, as if it was going to destroy the void at the same time. The cries of the crouching infants became extremely frightened and mournful. Endless lightning suddenly shot out from the 9 tails of these strange birds and condensed into a huge baby head. With a ferocious expression, it slammed into the seal. Fu Ying was one of the 8 primordial thunder beasts. Similar to the Kuan Yo, Fu Ying was born to control the Azure Heaven Thunder. Its power was slightly weaker than the Purple Heaven Thunder, but it had the power that the Purple Heaven Thunder didn't have, turning illusions into reality. Chapter 495. The giant baby head was the head of the hidden infant, and it was the form that could unleash the power of the Jade Sky Divine Lightning. The head suddenly collided with the Heaven's Child's seal. In an instant, an earth-shattering sound erupted from the point of collision. Boundless lightning covered the sky and the earth, enveloping the space within a radius of hundreds of thousands of kilometers. It was as if the end of the world had occurred before everyone's eyes. Lei Jun said indifferently, "It's just an instinctive ability. How can it compare to the physical strength of the heavenly lightning men?" He raised his right hand and pressed it down. Although it wasn't very fast, it was as if it held the power of heaven and earth. As it pressed down, it was as if the entire world was being pulled along with it, producing an unbelievable power. As he did so, the huge baby head formed by the Azure Heaven's divine lightning collapsed with a loud bang. The 100,000 hidden infant also collapsed in an instant. They let out miserable cries and were no longer able to form a complete group. They fell from the sky like rain. In the end, apart from a few of the stronger and more mature hidden infant, almost all the innate lightning beasts fell into the spiritual sea below. Moo! As the hidden infant fell, as the spiritual sea churned, a majestic bull's roar came from below. It shook the water of the spiritual sea, causing it to churn endlessly. Boundless lightning burst out and spread out, turning the spiritual sea within a radius of tens of thousands of kilometers into a sea of lightning. It was the hidden infant that had fallen and invaded the Kuei Ox's territory, resulting in an intense battle. The number of hidden infant was originally smaller than the Kuei Ox's tribe. After all, this was the Kuei Ox's lair, not the hidden infant's lair. On top of that, the Hiddening had suffered a great loss in the battle against Lei Zhan. Although not many Hiddening had died, their strength had been greatly shaken and their bodies had suffered many injuries. Due to these two reasons, the outcome of the battle had been decided as soon as it broke out. However, this naturally didn't matter to Lei Jiuxiao and the others. They couldn't pay too much attention to it. Lei Jiuxiao smiled and said, "The heavenly lightning men is indeed profound." Lei Zhan hurriedly said modestly, "Apologies for my incompetence." As he spoke, he'd already recalled the Heaven's Child seal, and with a casual grab, it transformed back into strands of lightning that gradually vanished into space. The Heaven's Child seal was just a divine ability. It wasn't real. Just now, when the Emperor's seal collided with the baby's head, it looked like the Emperor's seal had used absolute power to crush the baby's head. It looked like there was only a huge disparity in strength. However, that was not the case. After all, this Heaven's Child seal had only been casually formed by Lei Zhan. Although its structure was in accordance with some mysterious truth of lightning, it was unimaginably sturdy. However, it was only a small amount of lightning. In terms of power and brute force, it could not compare to the azure heaven divine lightning that was formed by 100,000 hidden nascent souls. The reason there was such a great disparity was because the Emperor's seal innately suppressed all the lightning in the primordial world, especially the 8 types of divine lightning condensed by the 8 natural lightning beasts. In the instant that the seal came into contact with the baby's head, it seemed like it was just a simple action, but in reality, there were billions of changes that had occurred. During the process of the changes, the azure heaven divine lightning on the baby's head was continuously taken by the Emperor's seal. It kept changing, and in the end, it turned around and struck the baby's head again. In addition to the power of the Emperor's seal itself, all of these factors superimposed on each other, resulting in the huge disparity. Lei Jiuxiao naturally saw all of the changes. That was why he was so impressed. As he spoke, the few of them set off again and headed towards the mountain of the heavenly Thundermen. There were 8 natural lightning beasts in the Linghai Prefecture, and the body of the Son of Lightning of the heavenly Thundermen was created based on the 8 natural lightning beasts. The mountain of the heavenly Thundermen was naturally in the Linghai Prefecture. However, it was not too far away from the Spirit Sea. It was only about 2 billion kilometers away. Those who cultivated the Thunder Dharma were naturally faster than ordinary cultivators. Thus, even for these inner disciples, it would only take a few years to cross this distance of 2 billion kilometers, let alone Lei Zhan and Lei Jiuxiao, who had already attained the Tao. The few of them turned into streaks of light and headed towards the heavenly Thundermen. Among them, Lei Jiuxiao followed Lei Zhan unhurriedly. Lei Zhan naturally could not ignore the inner disciples, so the streaks of light he transformed into spread out and wrapped around the 5 inner disciples' streaks of light. With the help of some mysterious technique of the heavenly Thundermen, the speed of the 5 inner disciples skyrocketed. Thus, they did not fall behind. Although they transformed into streaks of light to Lei Zhan and Lei Jiuxiao, this was no different from a normal journey. Naturally, it was not impossible. Along the way, Lei Zhan did not miss any opportunity to talk to Lei Jiuxiao about his understanding of the untainted land. In the process, he mixed in some of the problems he had encountered in his cultivation, hoping to obtain Lei Jiuxiao's answers. Lei Jiuxiao knew Lei Zhan's thoughts like the back of his hand, but he did not dislike it. Although he did not completely answer all of Lei Jiuxiao's questions, he did not deliberately hide anything. Occasionally, he would reveal a few words. To Lei Zhan, these few words were already an unimaginably huge gain. It made Lei Zhan's Tao heart, which had never been moved, tremble inexplicably. He could almost feel his cultivation realm growing at a perceptible speed. Lei Jiuxiao was currently a half-step true immortal, while Lei Zhan was currently an itinerant immortal. The difference in their cultivation realms was only one step. If it were any other cultivator, even if it were Khanate God, it was impossible for Lei Zhan to reap such a huge harvest with just a few words. The reason why Lei Jiuxiao could achieve this was because he cultivated the Dao fruit Great Dao that Luo Fan had created. Its degree of subtlety was far greater than the Sun of Lightning that Lei Zhan cultivated. In addition, he was constantly under the influence of Luo Fan. Occasionally, his words would reveal a few words that Luo Fan had said before, which were supreme techniques that directly pointed to the profound mysteries of the Great Tao. Naturally, it could cause an indescribable shock in Lei Zhan's mind. In this faint flow of energy, Lei Jiuxiao and Lei Zhan walked and stopped. After 3 years, they finally arrived in front of a huge mountain range with a circumference of 300,000 miles. There were 1,296 mountains in this mountain range. Among them, the tallest mountain was 100 million feet tall, while the shortest mountain was 100,000 feet tall. This is the mountain of my heavenly thunder. Lei Zhan stopped and smiled at Lei Jiuxiao. It is indeed majestic. Lei Jiuxiao looked at the huge mountain range and could not help but exclaim. Chapter 496. All the mountains in this mountain range stood according to some extremely complicated and abstruse positions, forming an extremely exquisite formation, forming an extremely mysterious domain in the entire mountain range. The mountain range was filled with ancient trees, exotic flowers, and rare beasts. The density of the innate vitality here was over 10,000 times greater than the outside world. There were also several Hun chaotic vitality sources hidden in the formation core of the mountain range. Streaks of light rose and fell in the mountain range, and auras that were both strong and weak filled the mountain range. It looked like an indescribable immortal cave or a home of cultivators. If this scene were to happen to other cultivators, or even other powerful innate gods, their eyes would naturally be filled with indescribable shock. His eyes were naturally filled with indescribable shock. He was shocked by the strength of this heavenly Thunderman. But for Lei Jiuxiao, who had seen many things and had even seen small, medium-sized, and thunderstorms, the mountain range before him could only be described as majestic. Lei Zhan didn't know that Lei Jiuxiao looked down on this mountain range. When he heard Lei Jiuxiao's words, he only thought that Lei Jiuxiao was praising the mountain range's power, so he couldn't help but feel proud. However, his cultivation of the Tao heart had already attained an extremely high level after all, so he merely smiled lightly. With a thought, rays of lightning gathered in front of him, instantly condensing into a profound and complicated talisman. After the talisman was formed, it suddenly blasted forward. It was as if a huge door had been opened on an invisible barrier, and a huge hole that seemed to be made of gold appeared in the void. It was 30 meters tall and over 150 kilometers long. At the same time, there seemed to be countless talismans and runes flashing outside the door. They drew a huge arc in the void, heading into the distance. In the end, they outlined the outline of a huge hemispherical defensive barrier that could envelop the entire mountain range. The outline disappeared as the runes flickered, and the surroundings returned to normal. There seemed to be nothing out of the ordinary, and it was completely no different from the surrounding void. Only the long passage made of gold appeared in front of everyone. Lei Jiuxiao looked at this scene, but his expression and mind didn't change at all. He had seen through the function of this formation with a single glance, and he had even analyzed its performance. At this moment, the appearance of such a defensive barrier formed by the grand formation before him was within his expectations, so there was naturally no need for him to be surprised. "Senior, please." After Lei Zhan opened the door, he made an inviting gesture towards Lei Jiuxiao. Lei Jiuxiao smiled and nodded. Without saying anything, he took a step forward and stepped into the golden passageway ahead. Lei Zhan and a few other inner disciples followed behind Lei Jiuxiao, blindly walking forward. After all, they were not ordinary people. Even if they were walking slowly, their speed was still quite impressive. In just a few breaths of time, They had already crossed 100 years. When they passed through the golden passageway, the innate yuan qi in front of them, which was tens of thousands of times denser than the outside world, blew against their faces. Taking a deep breath, they felt as if they had been completely cleansed from the inside out. Even Lei Jun couldn't help but feel relieved. Lei Jiuxiao breathed in the dense, innate yuan qi, but there wasn't the slightest hint of comfort or discomfort on his face. He was only inexplicably calm. After all, after attaining the earthly immortal's Tao fruit, he had been refining his magic power and confirming that the most effective earthly immortal's Tao fruit was still the Hun chaotic innate yuan qi. To him, innate yuan qi was already too low a level. If he were to absorb innate yuan qi to cultivate, his cultivation speed would be at least tens of thousands of times slower. Under such circumstances, even if the innate yuan qi was so dense that it was solid, it still wouldn't catch his eye. "Welcome to my heavenly thundermen, fellow Taoist Lei." At this moment, an indifferent and clear voice sounded in Lei Jiuxiao's ears. Then, lightning condensed, and 16 figures formed from lightning appeared in front of Lei Jiuxiao. These human figures had identical faces, and apart from the fact that they were condensed from lightning, which was a little unusual, they looked like real bodies of blood and flesh. The person who spoke was the middle-aged man at the very front. "I am a lord of the heavenly thundermen. These are the 15 elders of the men. Because we are currently refining a lightning magic treasure, we can't personally welcome you. Please forgive us, fellow Taoist." The middle-aged man smiled. When Lei Jun and the others saw the figures in front of them, they hurriedly bowed and stood to the side. The moment Lei Jiuxiao saw the figures formed from lightning, he knew that it was some kind of avatar technique. Although this technique was mysterious, it wasn't rare. At the very least, his master had taught him no less than 30 such avatar techniques. In comparison, the techniques used by the Heavenly Thundermen were only ordinary. Lei Jiuxiao had come for the Heavenly Thundermen's cultivation method of the Son of Lightning, so he naturally couldn't be arrogant. Thus he smiled and said, "There's no need to be so polite, fellow Taoist. I didn't know you were refining a magic treasure, so I should be the one apologizing." Fellow Taoist Lei, you're too kind. It's our honor to visit the Heavenly Thundermen. This way, please." The Lord of the Heavenly Thundermen laughed. Lei Jiuxiao smiled and nodded, then followed the Lord of the Heavenly Thundermen and landed on a mountain in the center of the mountain range. This mountain was 1,000,000 meters tall. It wasn't the tallest in the entire mountain range, but it was the place with the densest vitality. The peak of the mountain was hundreds of thousands of meters wide, and it was extremely flat, like a mirror. Clearly, someone had flattened it with great force. On top of this extremely flat mountain peak, there was a majestic palace that exuded the aura of a ruler. The supreme cultivation method of the Heavenly Thundermen was the cultivation method of the Son of Lightning. Since it was called the Son of Lightning, it naturally needed the aura of a ruler that could control everything. Although these palaces didn't take up too much space, they all corresponded with some indescribable mystery, bringing out the aura of a ruler to the fullest. All living beings that lived in them would be subtly modified, gradually tainting them with the aura of a ruler. In the end, it would be easier for them to cultivate the mysterious cultivation method of the Son of Lightning. The Lord of the Heavenly Thundermen landed in front of one of the palaces with Lei Jiuxiao and the others. As soon as they entered, Lei Jiuxiao felt strands of chaotic vitality seeping out from below. Through some kind of complicated and abnormal transformation, it was converted into innate vitality that contained the aura of lightning. It filled the interior of the palace, forming a domain that was extremely beneficial for cultivating lightning arts. Although the Lord of the Heavenly Thundermen and the others were only avatars, they received Lei Jiuxiao with the same etiquette. It was grand and simple, making Lei Jiuxiao feel respected but not complicated. It was rather comfortable, so he wasn't in a hurry to reveal his purpose for coming. As for Lei Jun and the others, there was nothing for them to do after the Lord of the Heavenly Thundermen appeared. The Lord of the Heavenly Thundermen said a few words and gave Lei Jun and the others some contribution points before letting them leave. After both sides sat down, the Lord of the Heavenly Thundermen smiled and said, "I've already learned of your purpose for coming from Lei Jun. I wonder what you're willing to pay in exchange for our sex cultivation method?" The Lord of the Heavenly Thundermen was also an innate god. Strictly speaking, his seniority wasn't any lower than Luo Fan's. It was just that Luo Fan's cultivation level was too high, so he didn't dare to compare himself to him. Now that he was facing Luo Fan's disciple, Lei Jiuxiao, although he was extremely courteous, he actually didn't have much of a mental disadvantage. Now that they were talking about the cultivation method of the Heavenly Thundermen, he naturally wouldn't be polite at all. Chapter 497. Lei Jiuxiao's mental cultivation had reached an unimaginable level. He had already expected the man's reaction, so he wasn't moved at all. He smiled and said, "Since you know why I'm here and are willing to talk with me, you must have a plan in mind. Why don't you tell me?" "Sure enough, I can't hide anything from you." The man smiled. While the Heavenly Thunder Lord and Lei Jiuxiao were talking, the other elders were like clay sculptures, just sitting at the side. It was obvious that the Heavenly Thunderman Lord had absolute authority in this Heavenly Thunderman. Lei Jiuxiao nodded, but didn't say anything. In reality, he wasn't determined to obtain the cultivation method for the Lightning Emperor's body. The reason why he wanted to obtain this cultivation method was because he felt that the cultivation method for the Lightning Emperor's body was similar to his Lightning Spirit body. He just wanted to see if there was anything he could learn from this cultivation method. The reason why he directly went to the man's mountain was to find an excuse to travel the primordial world. It was because of this mentality that he didn't care about any of the man's conditions. At most, he didn't want the cultivation method. The Heavenly Thunder Lord naturally didn't wait for Lei Jiuxiao's reply. After smiling, he said, "Lei Zhan said that fellow Taoist knows of a lightning tunnel above the Spirit Sea. If fellow Taoist is willing to tell me the method to enter and exit the lightning tunnel, I can give you the cultivation method of the Heavenly Son of Lightning. What do you think?" After saying that, the man looked at Lei Jiuxiao with a smile, waiting for him to make a decision. He was the leader of a sect as well. His cultivation in the Tao heart had already attained the true immortal realm, and his cultivation in the Tao heart had even attained the 4th level of the Tao heart. He'd long since possessed the might to remain unmoved by external forces. Thus, at this moment, even though he was discussing the Heavenly Lightning Sect's ultimate cultivation technique with someone else, his mind and consciousness were extremely calm, and there wasn't the slightest trace of unusual fluctuations. He seemed to be the same as Lei Jiuxiao. It didn't matter if he succeeded or not. Lei Jiuxiao looked at the Heavenly Thunder Lord with a deep gaze that seemed to contain boundless wisdom. He was able to see through the intentions of the Heavenly Thunder Lord. In reality, entering and exiting the Heavenly Lightning Cavern wasn't too troublesome. There weren't any complicated and abstruse techniques that could be used as the key. As long as they knew the location of the Lightning Heaven, any cultivator whose cultivation base had reached the bodiless immortal realm will be able to find a way to enter and exit the Lightning Heaven after spending some time studying it. Although this period of time could be thousands, tens of thousands of years, or even hundreds of thousands of years. Therefore, if it was purely based on entering and exiting the Heavenly Thunder Art, the Heavenly Thunder Art didn't need to pay any price to exchange with him. The reason why the Heavenly Thunder Lord had proposed such a trade wasn't because of the method to enter the Heavenly Thunder Cavern, but rather the entire Heavenly Thunder Cavern. Sure, Lei Jiuxiao smiled and nodded. Although he had been cultivating in the Thunderbolt Sky for such a long time, it did not mean that he valued the Thunderbolt Sky very much. For him, the Thunder Sky piercing thunder was only a place that had some benefits for his Thunder Spirit body. It could slightly increase the speed of his cultivation. There were currently 296 billion Heavenly Thunder Caverns in the Untainted Land, and many of them were similar to the Thunderbolt Sky piercing Thunder Cavern. If he wanted to, he could easily find another one at any time. Therefore, the Thunderbolt Sky piercing Thunder Cavern, which the Heavenly Thunder Master thought was extremely precious and was even willing to exchange their sect-guarding cultivation methods for, was something that he could do without. Moreover, the Heavenly Thunder Master had spoken with propriety. He didn't directly ask for the Thunderbolt sky-piercing thunder cavern, but only the method to enter and exit it. This meant that he didn't want to monopolize the Thunderbolt sky-piercing thunder cavern, but only wanted to share it with Lei Jiuxiao. To Lei Jiuxiao, there was almost no real loss. Under these circumstances, what reason did Lei Jiuxiao have to refuse? Being stared at by Lei Jiuxiao like this, the Heavenly Thunder Sect Master instantly understood that Lei Jiuxiao had already understood the hidden meaning in his words. He wasn't embarrassed and faintly smiled. Since that's the case, please look. With that, he pointed. Boundless lightning appeared out of thin air 3 feet in front of him and quickly condensed. In an instant, a thick book that was 3 feet wide and looked like 2 bricks stacked on top of each other was condensed into a huge book that looked like a man's board. Lei Jiuxiao couldn't help but nod inwardly at the Heavenly Thunder Master's actions. The Heavenly Thunder Master's method was to use his own will to naturally produce pure and mysterious divine lightning in the void. It was thousands of times more profound than the method Lei Zhen and the others had used to condense magic tools. From this, it could be seen how powerful the Heavenly Thunder Master was. Lei Jiuxiao raised his hand and beckoned. The book condensed from lightning floated toward him and landed in his hand. As soon as he touched the book, Lei Jiuxiao's eyes lit up. A pulsation of life was emanating from the book, as if it was a living thing, a mysterious creature that was growing in the primal chaos. It has actually condensed the embryonic form of an origin spirit. It is indeed profound. It seems that exchanging a thunder cavern for this cultivation method is worth it. Lei Jiuxiao smiled. This was a pulse of life coming from the book, and it was emitted by the origin spirit that was brewing inside the book. This kind of origin spirit was similar in nature to the treasure spirit of a magic treasure. As long as this kind of origin spirit was perfected tens of millions of times, it could truly become a treasure spirit with thoughts, intelligence, and emotions. It had all the conditions a living being must have, except for self-awareness. Of course, the difficulty of this process was no less than refining ordinary materials into a magic treasure. The time needed would be even longer. Because of this, if the Heavenly Thunder Master wanted to have a magic treasure, he had to gather the power of all the elders in the sect to refine it. Even when Lei Jiuxiao came, he had to use his avatar to welcome him. But even so, cultivating a divine ability to the point where it could casually produce an origin spirit, almost becoming a life form, was already an extremely profound ability. Lei Jiuxiao wasn't in a hurry to read the book. He casually pointed, and a beam of spiritual light rushed out of his hand and floated toward the Heavenly Thunder Master. The Heavenly Thunder Master also waved his hand, and the spiritual light fell into his hand. With a slight focus, a huge amount of information rushed into his mind from the spiritual light, allowing him to suddenly understand the location of the Thunder Cavern, the method to enter it, and even the condition of the environment within it. After understanding this information, the Heavenly Thunder Master's expression changed greatly. There was an indescribable emotion in his eyes. "Thank you, fellow Taoist. This time, I have taken advantage of you." The Heavenly Thunder Master sighed and bowed to Lei Jiuxiao. Previously, he had used some method to find out about the Heavenly Lightning Dong from Lei Zhen. He understood that the Heavenly Lightning Dong was of great significance to the Heavenly Lightning Men. If he could obtain it, it would bring him countless benefits. Thus, he immediately used the cultivation method of the Heavenly Lightning Son of Heaven to exchange for the Heavenly Lightning Dong. But it wasn't until he learned about the environment of the Thunder Cavern that he truly felt how precious it was. He felt how important this Thunder Cavern was to the Heavenly Thunder Master. With this Thunder Cavern, the difficulty of my disciples cultivating the Thunder Son of Heaven will be reduced by at least 10,000 times. I'm afraid that in a few years, I will be able to surpass the Three Gods sect and truly become the #1 sect in the untainted land. This was what the Heavenly Thunder Master was thinking. Lei Jiuxiao chuckled and said, "It's just taking what we need." It doesn't matter who takes advantage and who loses out. With that, he waved the book in his hand and said, "Since the trade has been completed, I won't disturb you any longer. I'll take my leave now." The Heavenly Thunder Master couldn't wait to go to the Spirit Sea and open the Thunder Cavern. Naturally, he couldn't wait for Lei Jiuxiao to say that he wanted to leave. After a few words, he sent Lei Jiuxiao away. Chapter 498. After Lei Jiuxiao left the Heavenly Thunder Mountain in a streak of light, the Heavenly Thunder Sect Master gathered his disciples and gave them some instructions. Then he and the many elders' clones took the true disciples away from the mountain range on their flying magic tools. Clearly, he was eager to see the Heavenly Thunder Mountain. Let's not talk about him. After Lei Jiuxiao left the Heavenly Thunder Mountain, he flew about 15 million kilometers to the west and arrived 500 kilometers above a mountain range. He stopped and revealed himself. The current untainted land was completely different from what he had seen more than 3,000 years ago. This could be felt from the 30 million kilometers of journey he had just traversed, as well as the long journey from the Spirit Sea to the Sky Thunder Mountain. The boundless, tyrannical, and earth-shattering vitality made Lei Jiuxiao feel extremely unfamiliar, but he also felt an indescribable excitement. At this moment, the mountain range beneath his feet was far less dense than the Heavenly Thunder Mountain in terms of both Khanate Vitality Chi and Hun Chaotic Vitality Chi. However, there was what Lei Jiuxiao wanted in this mountain range, a group of wind beasts. Ever since the great tribulation of heaven and earth, the untainted land had been filled with boundless vitality. Naturally, countless strange beasts with all kinds of special abilities and innate magical abilities were born. Among them were the 8 great Khanate lightning beasts, as well as various other types of beasts. Living in this mountain range were a group of Khanate wind beasts that were on the same level as the Khanate lightning beasts. However, they had different innate magical abilities. These Khanate wind beasts were shaped like wild boars. They were fat, short, and had long ears. They were born with the ability to control the giant boar Divine Wind. They were also extremely powerful beasts. Lei Jiuxiao hovered in the void, his eyes flashing with faint lightning as he looked down. The entire mountain range within a radius of tens of thousands of kilometers was clearly seen by him, as if he were looking at the lines on the palm of his hand. He instantly knew which parts of the mountain range attracted the most wind, which parts attracted the least wind, which parts had the most Khanate Vitality Chi, and which parts had the denser Hun Chaotic Vitality Chi. With a thought, Lei Jiuxiao pressed his body down and soon landed on a mountain that was only 30,000 feet tall. This was a place where there were still some remnants of Hun Chaotic Yuan Chi, and it was also the location of the largest group of gale beasts. The entire mountain was surrounded by a faint white mist, as if there were countless tiny particles piled up, illuminating the entire mountain until it was faintly discernible, like a celestial mountain paradise. Ordinary beings might mistake this white mist for condensed water vapor, but Lei Jiuxiao only needed a glance to know that this white mist was condensed from the purest giant capsule Divine Wind that contained boundless power. It was a powerful defensive layer formed by the natural breathing of the Zephyr Mountain dwellers. If any blood-red body crashed into this white mist without any defense, it would only take an instant for it to be reduced to the size of a speck of dust. Their bodies would be destroyed, and their Tao would vanish. Of course, this was as good as nothing to Lei Jiuxiao. The weak aura emanating from his body was enough to isolate the giant capsule Divine Wind, preventing it from approaching within 30 feet of him. Landing on the mountain peak, the white mist condensed from the giant capsule Divine Wind was very thin. Occasionally, there would be a trace of it, but it would disappear without a trace after being stirred by the Khanate Vitality Chi. The mountain peak was naturally simple and unadorned, but it was not barren. Instead, it was filled with ancient trees and green grass, showing off a thriving vitality. Everything in the world had to reinforce and restrain each other. Although the giant capsule Divine Wind had piled up around the mountain peak and occasionally touched the mountain itself, destroying all ordinary plants, This was the primordial world, after all. There were all kinds of plants that did not fear the giant capsule divine wind that could grow on this mountain peak. The changes over the past thousands of years had even produced some plants that could use the giant capsule divine wind as nourishment, allowing them to grow exceptionally lush. Lei Jiuxiao casually made a grabbing motion, and several towering ancient trees on the mountaintop shook violently before transforming into countless wooden planks. Like building blocks, they instantly formed a fully furnished wooden house with a radius of 100 feet around him, divided into several rooms, and divided into several rooms. The moment the wooden house took shape, the faint giant capsule divine wind in the surroundings quickly gathered. Wisps of white mist flowed into the wooden house like rivers flowing into the sea. They gradually fused with the wooden house, causing it to turn white, as if it was made of white jade. The patterns on the wooden blocks seemed to contain some kind of indescribable mystery, some kind of law of the world, and they resonated with some kind of indescribable existence. The proportion and structure of the hut also contained some kind of indescribable truth, causing the entire hut to be strengthened by some kind of supreme power, as if no power could damage it. Lei Jiuxiao smiled and sat down on the brick bed. With a wave of his hand, the book he had stored into the void of lightning appeared in his hand. The void of lightning was a kind of storage space that Lei Jiuxiao had refined over the years. It was no different from the world in the palm, the sun and moon in the chest, and the universe in the sleeve. It was just that with the body of the lightning spirit, it was easier for him to use it, and the space he could open was even larger. On the cover of this book, there were these 4 complicated and profound panga characters. Flipping open the book was filled with countless words, diagrams, talismans, and formations. Although the entire book only recorded one cultivation method, it was all-encompassing and could even be divided into 8 equally profound and abnormal deities. The cultivation method of the Great Tao. Lei Jiuxiao was Luo Fan's disciple and had received Luo Fan's true teachings. His vision was naturally not that of an ordinary Khanate god. In the eyes of other living beings, even the Heavenly Thunder Lord, this cultivation method was extremely complicated. It would take thousands of years before one could even comprehend it. However, to Lei Jiuxiao, he only needed to read it once to instantly understand the true essence of this cultivation method. I see. No wonder it's so profound. After flipping through the book, Lei Jiuxiao's eyes shone with faint joy and an indescribable light of enlightenment. With a slight thought, boundless lightning was born from the wooden house and quickly gathered towards him. The lightning wasn't simple, but divided into 8 types, each containing endless power and indescribable mysteries. These were the 8 types of innate lightning that the 8 great lightning beasts could innately control. The 8 innate godly thunders weaved together 3 feet away from Lei Jiuxiao, like a cloth woven by threads. They rapidly moved back and forth, and in a short while, they degenerated into a glowing cocoon of light that contained boundless might. Wind and lightning coexist, just as I thought. This thought flashed through Lei Jiuxiao's mind. Chapter 499. These godly thunders were created by Lei Jiuxiao with the help of the ancient wood growing in the giant capsule divine wind after he comprehended the cultivation method of the son of heaven's lightning. Wind and lightning were born together. This was one of the most basic laws of the primitive world. The giant capsule godly wind was an extremely mysterious type of wind that was born with an unimaginable degree of compatibility with lightning. Otherwise, Zhao Feng, who was born with the ability to control the giant capsule godly wind, would not have appeared in this mountain range so close to the 8 innate lightning beasts. This quality of the giant capsule divine wind was the most important reason why Lei Jiuxiao had chosen to stay here. After the 8 types of natural lightning formed a cocoon of light in front of Lei Jiuxiao, the godly thunder emitted from the wooden house did not stop at all. Instead, like a dam that had collapsed, the speed at which the godly thunder seeped out increased by countless times. Billions of lightning bolts instantly enveloped the entire space within the wooden house, leaving not a single crack in the wooden house. It was as if it had turned into a world of lightning. Lei Jiuxiao was a lightning spirit. When he passed through the heavenly tribulation, he had wandered through the true meaning of lightning hidden within the supreme Great Tao. Although the boundless godly thunder had unlimited power and enveloped the entire space within the wooden house, it was like water to a fish to him. As he breathed, the godly thunder spirit continuously swallowed and exhaled without causing the slightest bit of damage to his body. Instead, it tempered his body, allowing his lightning spirit body to continuously increase its affinity with the godly thunder spirit's essence. As the endless thunderbolts surged out, the wooden house that was built from the ancient wood did not shrink at all. Instead, it appeared to be even purer and more firm. The white jade-like color became even more crystal clear, as though the continuous surging of the thunderbolts was beneficial to it. This was the truth. Wind and thunder were born together. Since there was godly thunder, the godly thunder that was born would naturally strengthen the giant capsule divine wind within the ancient wood, making the ancient wood even more resilient and smooth. This process continued for a full 10 days and 10 nights. After 10 days and 10 nights, the light emitted by the heavenly thunder was as bright as the sun, illuminating the peak of the mountain. It even shone through the white mist formed by the heavenly wind, making it seem as if the white mist did not exist. This process was like the ordinary mist meeting the sun. The light cocoon floating in front of Lei Jiuxiao was so bright that even Lei Jiuxiao found it a little dazzling. As for the 8 types of divine lightning, they had already become indistinguishable a few days ago. On the cocoon of light, the threads formed by divine lightning constantly shuttled back and forth, constantly changing and twisting. In the end, they turned into countless extremely thin but unimaginably complicated talismans. These talismans seemed to have come to life, constantly hovering on the surface of the light cocoon, as if there were countless strange creatures living in a miniature world. There was even a faint spiritual vigor that was constantly emitting from it. The combination of these countless microscopic talismans caused the entire cocoon of light to expand and contract, as if it was a heart that was beating nonstop. It's time. Lightning flashed rapidly in Lei Jiuxiao's eyes, as if the lightning that had been brewing for 10 days and 10 nights was about to strike down with a loud bang, destroying the entire void and the entire world. Then, he raised his hand and suddenly pointed at the light cocoon in front of him. With his point of his finger, the light cocoon suddenly shook. At the same time, the 8 types of godly thunder that had been constantly emitting from the wooden house and rushing into the light cocoon for 10 days and 10 nights suddenly paused and instantly stopped. Although the godly thunder had stopped surging out, the light that enveloped the entire mountain like the sun still existed. It even became even more dazzling because of the premonition of a drastic change, and the area it covered was several times wider than before. The area of effect spanned tens of thousands of miles, directly enveloping the mountain next to it. Roar, a beastly roar that was filled with boundless majesty and fury, suddenly erupted from a mountain peak that was also 300,000 feet tall. It was a mountain peak that was also 300,000 feet tall. After this roar, thousands of roars of the same species that were countless times less majestic rang out. They combined with the energy fluctuations from the first roar and formed countless rice-sized white granules. They wrapped around the mountain like a tornado and rapidly spread, sweeping towards the mountain that Lei Jiuxiao was currently on. When Lei Jiuxiao heard this roar, he immediately knew that it was the wind-beckoning king's roar. Although he had been condensing the 8 types of godly thunder to cultivate the lightning emperor's clone over the past 10 days and 10 nights, he still had a portion of his attention to pay attention to the changes in the wind-beckoning king. In fact, a day after he condensed the godly thunder, the wind-beckoning kings on the mountain had sensed the power of the godly thunder on the mountain and knew how powerful Lei Jiuxiao was. As a result, they had moved to the mountain next to him. The reason for this was because there was a wind-beckoning king among the wind-beckoning kings. It was because of the wind-beckoning king that the wind-beckoning kings, who were not very intelligent, could avoid danger. They would not attack recklessly just because Lei Jiuxiao had invaded their territory. However, although the wind-beckoning king had the power of an itinerant immortal, it was still only a wind-beckoning king. Even if it was much more intelligent than normal wind-beckoning kings, it was still very simple and stupid. It cannot compare to a real cultivator. As a result, when the godly thunder grew several times brighter and enveloped the mountain they were moving to, the wind-beckoning king finally could not hold it in any longer. It directly erupted with its power and gathered many wind-beckoning kings' innate abilities to attack Lei Jiuxiao with its roar. You finally couldn't hold it in any longer. I've been waiting for you for a long time. Lei Jiuxiao smiled. At this moment, the cocoon of light trembled, and countless spiderweb-like cracks appeared on it. The moment these cracks appeared, the countless talismans that had been living on the surface of the light cocoon like living beings were like flies that had found a crack. They crazily burrowed into the cracks that had appeared, as if there was something inside that had infinite attraction to them. After the cracks appeared, they began to spread rapidly. In just an instant, they covered every inch of the surface of the cocoon of light. And in that instant, the countless talismans on the cocoon of light had completely disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only the brilliance of the lightning, which did not exist other than the cracks. An increasingly powerful pressure began to appear within the cocoon of light. The surrounding space seemed to tremble slightly, as if the entire world was cheering for the thing that was about to break out of the cocoon of light and change. Chapter 500. At the same time, strands of lightning suddenly appeared out of thin air, completely enveloping the mountain like smoke. The mountain that was originally shrouded in white mist was now shrouded in faint purple mist. Moreover, because the color of the mist was very similar to the color of the lightning, it greatly increased the presence of the mist, making it even more conspicuous. The moment the mist appeared, it collided with a giant capsule of divine wind that was attached to the roar. Wind and lightning engendering each other was an absolute principle, but depended on the timing. At this moment, the divine wind contained the will to summon wind and repel all things, so it was naturally impossible for it to continue engendering the lightning summoned by Lei Jiuxiao. The moment the two collided, a powerful tremor spread out from the point of collision. It was as if the sky was falling and the earth was splitting apart. Although the giant divine wind seemed to be extremely powerful, like a tornado that could swallow the heavens and devour the earth, it was scattered after all. When it collided with the thunderbolts that were only protecting the mountain, the result was obvious. In that instant, the giant capsule of divine wind surged down like a waterfall, but it seemed to have collided with an extremely sturdy reef. It was directly split in two. Although its power was even more astonishing, it did no damage to the mountain at all. Of course, the lightning that Lei Jiuxiao had summoned also suffered great losses during this process. It was evident that the purple mist had become much thinner. However, Lei Jiuxiao didn't care about the giant capsule of divine wind at all. He wasn't surprised or pleased by this result at all. This was because the changes in front of him had reached the most critical moment. It was also the moment when the result would be revealed. Lightning of the world, enter my jar. Two leisurely yells suddenly came from the light cocoon that had been shattered into countless fragments and could only barely maintain the shape of a light cocoon under the cracks. As the long een spread out, the lightning that had been barely able to maintain the shape of the light cocoon suddenly collapsed and was instantly cast into a figure that appeared within the light cocoon. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared without a trace, revealing a figure that gave off the boundless pressure of a king, as if he could control everything in the world. The moment this figure appeared, the dazzling light that covered the sky and covered the earth like the setting sun suddenly disappeared without a trace. The peak of this mountain had become as ordinary as it had been for thousands of years. The only difference was that there were fewer ancient trees and an additional wooden house. After that, the figure nodded at Lei Jiuxiao. It was as if he was standing in the center of the world, and the entire world revolved around him. Lei Jiuxiao looked at the figure, his face full of admiration, as expected of the son of lightning. Even though he only nodded, I can't help but feel moved to tears. This thought flashed through his mind. The figure before him looked exactly the same as Lei Jiuxiao. Even the clothes he wore were not much different from Lei Jiuxiao's. Just by looking at the surface, it was like looking at the inside and outside of Lei Jiuxiao. There was no difference at all. However, this was only his appearance. The person before him gave off a feeling that was worlds apart from Lei Jiuxiao. The powerful emperor aura that filled this person's surroundings made it seem like he was the center of the universe, the center of the world, and everything in the world had to move according to his will. This aura completely distinguished him from Lei Jiuxiao. No living being would associate the two of them together unless they saw them at the same time. They would not think that they had anything in common at all. This was the son of lightning. It was also a clone that Lei Jiuxiao had cultivated in the past 10 days after comprehending the cultivation method of the body of Lightning's son of lightning. It was very natural for Lei Jiuxiao to make such a choice. After all, the Tao fruit that he cultivated was the most exquisite cultivation method in the world, the one that was most compatible with the Tao. As long as he continued to cultivate according to it, he wouldn't dare to say that he would be able to smoothly attain the Tao fruit of Han Yuan, but at the very least, it would be thousands of times better than cultivating other cultivation methods. Under such circumstances, he naturally could not give up on this path to heaven and choose a cultivation method like the Son of Lightning that had an uncertain future. Even the cultivation method above the perfected immortal realm was still being sought. Condensing a clone to cultivate the cultivation method of the lightning son of heaven's body would not affect Lei Jiuxiao's own cultivation, but it would allow him to grasp the essence of the lightning son of heaven's body more perfectly. This was naturally the best choice. As for the method of condensing a clone, it was no different from cabbages on the street for Lei Jiuxiao, who had obtained the true teachings of Luo Fan. He could casually take out more than a dozen of them, and each of them was 100 times more profound than the clone technique that the Lord of Lightning used. After sensing it slightly, the endless power contained in the body of the Son of Lightning was instantly absorbed into his mind. The control of the body of the Son of Lightning over the world was completely different from his own lightning spirit body, as well as the various lightning abilities and techniques that he used. It was a completely instinctive action that did not require any thought or effort. All it took was a single thought, and it would naturally obtain the response of the thunder and lightning of the world. Naturally, there would be a kind of control over the thunder and lightning. Lei Jiuxiao's knowledge was many times greater than that of the Lord of Lightning and the others. As soon as he sensed the characteristics of the body of the Son of Lightning, he knew that this kind of control was already quite close to the embryonic form of verbal compliance law. However, this embryonic form of verbal compliance law only targeted lightning. I didn't expect the essence of the body of the Son of Lightning to be even more profound than I imagined. Lei Jiuxiao could not help but exclaim in admiration. Although this kind of verbal compliance law was very simple and crude, it was already an ability that could only be possessed by those who had seen the Tai Tao fruit in advance. It was not an ability that ordinary Tai immortals could grasp. Cultivators who did not cultivate the Tao fruit, but broke through to the golden immortal realm, were Tai immortals. They were divided into Tai unaffiliated immortals, Tai true immortals, and Tai unaffiliated immortals. They were fundamentally different from the 3 digits of Tai Tao fruit. With this understanding, Lei Jiuxiao valued the cultivation method of the body of the Son of Lightning even more. At this moment, an incomparably loud and powerful roar came from the outside. An incomparably loud roar filled with intense pressure brought along an even more intense, shocking, and mighty giant mammoth divine wind that pressed down on the mountain peak. The cloud-like lightning around the mountain peak caused the entire mountain peak to tremble as well. I just happen to need you guys to study it." Late Jiuxiao smiled. With a thought, the clone of the son of lightning expressionlessly took a step forward. With a flash of lightning, it disappeared from the wooden house. Chapter 501. When the lightning son of heaven clone appeared again, he was already outside the mountain, in front of the huge tornado formed by the giant capsule divine wind. After leaving Lei Jiuxiao's side, the lightning son of heaven clone's aura suddenly increased by more than 1,000,000 times. The aura of an emperor that could control everything in the world was so strong that it was almost tangible. In the blink of an eye, there seemed to be endless golden light bursting out from the lightning son of heaven's clone, enough to blind one's eyes. This powerful aura was many times stronger than Lei Zhen, who had cultivated the thunderbolt son of heaven's body. The lightning son of heaven clone did not need to wear any yellow robes to show the fact that he was an emperor. Naturally, he did not need the emperor's throne or emperor's seal. He floated in the void, and lightning flashed in his eyes. In the core of the giant capsule divine wind, a lightning bolt as thin as a thumb suddenly appeared out of nowhere. This thunderbolt was condensed to the limit, so pure that it even expelled all the innate yuan qi within a radius of several hundred feet, turning the area around it into a vacuum zone that was completely devoid of yuan qi and energy. After the lightning bolt formed, it suddenly twisted and shook like a living thing. It let out a cry that clearly existed, but no living being could hear. It suddenly drilled down and circled around an arc that was clearly not something that a living being could make. With a sleek and lively feeling, it drilled into the mountain in the center of the tornado. As the lightning bolt drilled and like a living thing, the wind beckoning king's endless roars suddenly stopped. Even though this gigantic divine wind tornado was created by tens of thousands of innate gods, it was so powerful that it even enveloped the entire mountain where Lei Jiuxiao resided. The power that was gathered came from the many wind beckoning monarchs. However, the wind beckoning monarch was the leader after all. It was only because of the existence of the wind beckoning monarch that it could gather such power and erupt with unimaginable might. At this moment, the wind beckoning king's roar suddenly stopped. The core that condensed all the beckoning winds into one naturally disappeared. After losing its core, the tornado that was formed from countless wind summoning divine abilities split into countless parts and collapsed. Even though it was barely condensed into the shape of a tornado, its cohesiveness, its destructive power, and its power that could devour and annihilate all matter had weakened by countless times. At this moment, the tornado could only sweep up a rock the size of a house at most. For Lei Jiuxiao and the lightning son of heaven clone, they didn't even need to defend themselves to avoid all damage. Boom! The wind beckoning king let out another loud roar. However, this roar was no longer filled with anger like before, wanting to gather all the power to counterattack Lei Jiuxiao. Instead, it was mixed with endless fear and panic. It was as if it had encountered something unbelievable, something that could kill it. As time passed, the tornado formed by the giant capsule god wind dissipated more and more. Coupled with the fact that the beckoning winds had lost the wind beckoning king's control, their roars became louder and louder. In the end, the boundless giant capsule god wind gradually disappeared. The roar also gradually weakened due to the disappearance of its power. In the end, it disappeared without a trace. This process lasted for a quarter of an hour. The lightning son of heaven clone floated in the air quietly for 15 minutes. During this process, his expression was extremely calm. Even his gaze didn't move at all. It was as if he only needed to take action and the outcome would be decided. There was no need for him to think about it at all, nor was there a need for him to take action again. 15 minutes later, a bolt of lightning charged out of the mountain like it was alive, heading straight for the lightning son of heaven. Although the lightning was only the size of a thumb and was long, it looked no different from ordinary lightning on the surface. However, it gave off the feeling that it had eyebrows and eyes, as if it was a real creature. Although the lightning looked ordinary as it charged out, It gave off a lively aura like a thief that had succeeded and was retreating. It was extremely mysterious. As the lightning charged out, the beckoning wind's roars that occasionally existed in the mountain suddenly grew louder. They were filled with anxiety, fear, panic, and anger from losing something precious. At this moment, the bolt of lightning had already arrived in front of the Son of Thunder's clone. It spun around, and like a living creature spitting something out, it began to bulge from the center and gradually moved forward. Finally, with a poof, it turned into a pig-shaped beast that was 100 feet tall and had 2 big ears like men's boards. It was a beckoning wind. After the lightning spat out the beckoning wind, it suddenly collapsed and disappeared into the air. From a moment, the lightning appeared to its disappearance. The lightning Son of Heaven clone's eyes only flashed slightly. It did not even make the slightest movement. It was like a high and mighty emperor only needed a slight change in his gaze, and there would be countless people trying to figure out what the emperor was thinking. The beckoning wind that was caught by the lightning that had already developed consciousness was the king of the group of beckoning winds. It was the beckoning wind king that had provoked Lei Jiuxiao and unleashed its ability to attack Lei Jiuxiao. After the wind king appeared, it was as if it was being suppressed by an indescribable force. It floated in the air, its body trembling uncontrollably. Its eyes were filled with fear, and its 2 ears were pressed tightly against its body. It was as if all its strength had been sucked away. It didn't dare to move at all. It didn't even dare to look at the Son of Thunder's doppelganger. The lightning Son of Heaven clone did not move at all, nor did it release any power. It merely looked at the beckoning wind king indifferently. Yet the beckoning wind king had already been suppressed to such a state by its aura. The beckoning wind king was a king of the group of beckoning wind kings, controlling the lives and deaths of countless beckoning wind kings and everything within a radius of hundreds of thousands of kilometers. However, the beckoning wind king's so-called king status was worlds apart from the lightning Son of Heaven, a supreme existence that controlled all lightning in the primordial world. The lightning Son of Heaven clone was not surprised by this change at all. He could not even be bothered to give any instructions. He glanced at the beckoning wind king, turned his head, and took a step forward, disappearing into the air. When the beckoning wind king was glanced at by the lightning Son of Heaven clone, its body trembled violently again. It was as if a wave of power had suddenly appeared in its body out of nowhere. The fear in its eyes became even more intense, but it did not dare to be careless. It hurriedly flapped its ears, and a huge divine wind was produced behind its ears. It dragged its body quickly towards the peak of the mountain where Lei Jiuxiao was. Before long, it landed in front of the wooden hut. It seemed to have received an order from the lightning Son of Heaven clone. Don't be afraid. Although you can't withstand the lightning Son of Heaven's aura now, if I use the cultivation method of the lightning Son of Heaven's body to create the cultivation method of the wind Son of Heaven's body for you, you won't be afraid of this aura anymore. At this moment, a melodious and indifferent voice rang out in the Wind King's ears. It made the Wind King feel as if a clear stream had flowed through its body, allowing it to recover from the pressure from the Thunderbolt Heaven Son's clone's aura. Chapter 502. Son of Heaven Feng, middle, Lei Jiuxiao was a thunder spirit. Even though he had never cultivated, he was born with an incomparable affinity to the thunderbolts of heaven and earth. Moreover, he cultivated the Tao, fruit great Tao, and obtained the true teachings of Luo Fan. His understanding of cultivation methods was tens of thousands of times greater than that of ordinary innate gods. Under such circumstances, he could reach or even surpass the level of the creator of the cultivation method just by looking at the cultivation method of the Thunderbolt Son of Heaven. He directly transcended the appearance of thunderbolts and went deep into the essence of the Son of Heaven. This was also the reason why he could cultivate the Thunderbolt Son of Heaven clone with the help of the clone cultivation method. It was precisely because he had a deep understanding of the essence of the Son of Heaven and the cultivation method of the Thunderbolt Son of Heaven cultivation method that he completely understood the countless mysterious and complicated changes that occurred during the process of combining the 8 primordial thunder beasts to form the Thunderbolt Son of Heaven clone. This made it possible to duplicate the Thunderbolt Son of Heaven clone. Under such circumstances, the cultivation method of the Thunderbolt Son of Heaven clone appeared in Lei Jiuxiao's mind vaguely. In the process of rushing to the mountain gate of the Heavenly Thunder sect with Lei Zhun, Lei Jiuxiao had already learned about the characteristics of many special beasts in the untainted world. Zhao Feng was an innate wind beast, which was at the same level as the foundation of the Heavenly Thunder sect, the innate thunder beast. It could even be said that other than the innate magic skills that they mastered, they were extremely similar in all aspects. Under such circumstances, their understanding of the innate wind beast was naturally far greater than that of other innate gods. Therefore, Lei Jiuxiao also learned about the innate wind beast from Lei Zhun. In the untainted world, there were 6 innate thunder beasts, namely Xiaofeng, Luyin, Miao Miao, and Wangong. Each of the 6 innate wind beasts controlled a type of innate divine wind, just like the 8 innate thunder beasts controlled a type of innate divine thunder. The 6 innate wind beasts and the 8 innate thunder beasts were similar in nature, so the innate wind beasts could also use the essence of the Son of Heaven to combine the bodies of the 6 innate wind beasts to become the supreme body of Son of Heaven clone, which could control all astral winds and divine wind in the untainted world. Of course, this was only a possibility at the root. After all, Lei Jiuxiao wasn't a supreme existence like Luo Fan, who had inherited Pangu's origin spirit and possessed countless abilities and techniques in his memories. Even though he'd gained a thorough understanding of the essence of the Son of Heaven from the cultivation technique of the Lightning Son of Heaven, his knowledge of the 6 innate wind beasts was limited to their names, appearances, and innate abilities. He didn't know anything about the structure of the 6 innate wind beast bodies or the various internal mechanisms. Under such circumstances, it was still an impossible task for him to create a cultivation method for the body of Emperor Wind. He could only spend a lot of time studying the 6 innate wind beasts and completely grasp the nature of each innate wind beast. Only then could he truly wrap the nature of the Emperor with the appearance of the wind and create a cultivation method for the body of Emperor Wind. After all, the Wind Beckoning King was many times more intelligent than ordinary wind beckoning kings, even though it couldn't be compared to a living being that possessed complete intelligence. It had reached a level where it could understand the pros and cons of the situation. It knew what Lei Jiuxiao's words meant to it. Under such circumstances, the Wind Beckoning King's eyes were suddenly filled with indescribable surprise and joy when it heard Lei Jiuxiao's words. His entire body was no longer trembling. He stood up and let out a few coo-coo sounds. This kind of sound was no longer filled with anger and majesty like before. Instead, it was incomparably docile, as if it was trying to curry favor and flatter. Lei Jiuxiao smiled when he saw the Wind Beckoning King's reaction. "Come over here." The Wind Beckoning King didn't hesitate at all. It hurriedly ran over and looked at Lei Jiuxiao with its round eyes that were filled with endless hope. Lei Jiuxiao paid no heed to the Wind Beckoning King's gaze. He casually grabbed out, and an invisible force pulled the Wind Beckoning King into the air. It only stopped when the Wind Beckoning King's body was at the same height as Lei Jiuxiao's line of sight. Following that, millions of invisible lightning bolts suddenly appeared in the air above the lightning in Lei Jiuxiao's eyes. They formed a dense lightning net that wrapped around the Wind Beckoning King's body, turning it into a huge lightning bore. The Wind Beckoning King showed fear in its eyes as it was wrapped up by the lightning net. However, there was no telling if it was because it trusted Lei Jiuxiao completely, or if it knew that it couldn't break free no matter how it struggled, but remained motionless within the lightning net. It was just that its eyes were darting around. After the lightning net wrapped around the Wind Heralding King, it shook and suddenly burrowed into the Wind Heralding King's apertures. In an instant, the Wind Heralding King's body was illuminated from inside out. One could see countless bolts of lightning roaming within his body with the naked eye. The wind-beckoning king seemed to feel endless pain. Its entire body trembled violently. The trembling affected every muscle, inch, and hair on its body. Its eyes were filled with indescribable fear. It opened its mouth as if it wanted to roar, but it couldn't. With a thought from Lei Jiuxiao, the endless lightning bolts entered the wind-beckoning king's acupoints again and entered the air, disappearing without a trace. I see. After the lightning disappeared, he closed his eyes, and a thought quickly flashed through his mind. After a long while, he opened his eyes and pointed casually. A ray of light rushed out of his hand and pierced through the air, entering the wind-beckoning king's forehead. As the spiritual light entered, the exhausted wind-summoning king, who was paralyzed in the air, suddenly woke up as if he had been electrocuted. His eyes widened as if they were going to fall out of their sockets. At the same time, endless words, diagrams, runes, and talismans flowed through the wind-beckoning king's eyes like a waterfall. As the information flowed like a waterfall, the wind-beckoning king's body twisted and trembled subconsciously. This process lasted for 2 hours. 2 hours later, all the phenomena disappeared. The wind-beckoning king regained control of his body. However, after regaining control of his body, the wind-beckoning king didn't return to his original form immediately. Instead, he spread his body, and his 2 ears suddenly swelled up. Like 2 fans that were growing and expanding, they suddenly expanded in all directions. In the blink of an eye, they had expanded to a radius of 1,000 meters. Like a sky curtain, they completely concealed everything in front of Lei Jiuxiao. After the 2 ears expanded to such an extent, they began to tremble violently in a mysterious and unpredictable way. This trembling triggered some kind of unfathomable power, causing some kind of unfathomable existence in the air to quickly gather towards the wind-beckoning king. The white mist-like giant capsule divine wind began to spread in all directions with the 2 huge ears as the source. Gradually, it enveloped the entire mountain, causing the white mist that had originally disappeared to disperse once more. Moreover, it quickly surpassed the previous white mist, becoming tens of thousands of times thicker than before. It almost condensed into a liquid state, rippling at the top of the mountain like a white ocean. Although Lei Jiuxiao was dozens of feet away from the Wind King, he had already attained the fruit of the earthly immortal Tao and was only half a step away from the realm of true immortals. There was an invisible and mysterious power protecting him at all times. Although the endless, giant, phantasmal divine wind was extremely powerful and could obliterate all physical matter, it could not break through the protection of this mysterious power. When it was 3 feet away from his body, it naturally parted to 2 sides and floated in all directions, naturally bypassing his body and not causing the slightest damage to his body. Lei Jiuxiao's eyes flashed with lightning as he looked at the wind-beckoning king's transformation. He nodded slightly. Although my spiritual sense and intelligence are a little lacking, I should be able to cultivate this body of wind-beckoning cultivation method. Such thoughts flashed through Lei Jiuxiao's mind. Although Lei Jiuxiao wanted to create a cultivation method for the body of Wind Emperor and even had a rough understanding of the essence of this cultivation method, he had only seen the beckoning wind among the 6 connate wind beasts. He had never seen the other wind beasts, so he naturally couldn't directly create a cultivation method for the body of Wind Emperor. At this moment, the cultivation method that he injected into the depths of the wind-beckoning king's spiritual sense was only one of the 6 cultivation methods that formed the body of Son of Heaven Feng that he had created based on his research on the body structure of the wind-beckoning king. It was only the cultivation method of the wind-beckoning body. The wind-beckoning king was the king of the wind-beckoning king, so its body structure was naturally the body of wind-beckoning. It didn't need to cultivate the body of wind-beckoning cultivation method to have the connate ability to control the wind-beckoning king's spirit sense. However, it was only controlling this connate ability. If it didn't cultivate this cultivation method, it wouldn't be able to continue cultivating the other connate wind beast cultivation methods, let alone the body of Wind Emperor. Because of this, Lei Jiuxiao made the Wind Beckoning King recultivate the body of Wind Beckoning cultivation method that he already had. However, this seemingly repeated cultivation method was extremely beneficial to the Wind Beckoning King and reached an unimaginable level. Although the Wind Summoning King was born as the ruler of the Wind Summoning tribe and possessed unbelievably great power and powerful innate abilities, it was precisely because these powers and abilities were innate that the Wind Summoning King only knew how these powers and abilities worked, but did not know why they worked. It was just that it could only be used and couldn't derive new abilities or create stronger abilities based on that foundation. The recondensing of the body of Wind Beckoning gave it a chance to make up for this weakness. Chapter 503. Within the giant divine wind that was as dense as liquid, the Wind Beckoning King was constantly undergoing mysterious changes. Its original body suddenly collapsed and turned into countless extremely tiny particles. Under the effect of some mysterious power, it began to reconstruct itself in a meticulous manner. During this process, the extremely dense giant divine wind in the surroundings constantly fused with the countless particles. During this process, it also changed its structure according to the requirements of the cultivation method, making the giant divine wind that had fused with the particles even more profound and wondrous. Lightning flashed through Lei Jiuxiao's eyes. He observed every single detail of the Wind Beckoning King's body, including the slightest changes. He had created the cultivation method based on the Wind Beckoning King's body structure on the spot. It could be said that the Wind Beckoning King was the first living being to cultivate this cultivation method. However, the technique was created based on the Wind Heralding King's body after all. Hence, even if there were some imperfections and inaccuracies, it did not affect the Wind Heralding King too much. At most, the Wind Heralding King would not be able to unleash the greatest power of the Avatar of Wind. At this moment, Lei Jiuxiao was carefully analyzing the various minute changes that the Wind Summoning Monarch had undergone in the process of cultivating the Wind Summoning physique. He compared it with his own deductions and gradually discovered many problems that he had overlooked before. He had some new ideas about the Wind Summoning physique cultivation method. He felt that there was even more room for improvement in this cultivation method. It really was the right choice to let the Wind Beckoning King be the first to cultivate this cultivation method. The thought appeared in Lei Jiuxiao's mind out of nowhere. He could not help but smile. 3 days and 3 nights later, the liquid giant divine wind that completely covered the top of the mountain like an ocean seemed to have been sucked away by a black hole. It began to shrink at an unimaginable speed. In just a few dozen breaths, it completely disappeared. Only a thick layer of white mist that could obscure the vision of living beings was left in front of Lei Jiuxiao. The mist churned and trembled slightly. "Open!" A simple and honest voice suddenly rang out from the white mist, causing the wooden hut Lei Jiuxiao had built to sway slightly like a gust of wind that could hurt one's face. Immediately thereafter, the ball of white mist abruptly shuddered before shattering into countless tiny fragments that expanded countless times in size before vanishing into thin air. What appeared was a big man in a white short-sleeved shirt. He had a simple and honest face, large ears, and a somewhat upturned nose. His eyes were slightly dull. It was the Wind Summoning King who had already cultivated the Wind Summoning body. The cultivation method of the body of Wind Summoning was created by Lei Jiuxiao. It was part of the cultivation method of the body of Emperor Fengzi. Naturally, it was for the living beings who cultivated this cultivation method to eventually achieve the body of Emperor Fengzi and control all the wind in the primordial world. Therefore, it was impossible for this kind of cultivation method to achieve the summoning wind, which could not be changed in the end. If that was the case, how could the 6 innate wind beasts be merged into one? Of course, it was only possible to freely switch between the innate Taoism body and the body of wind summoning after cultivating it. Therefore, after easily cultivating the body of wind summoning, the wind summoning king could easily switch between the innate Taoism body and the body of wind summoning. What appeared in front of Lei Jiuxiao now was the innate Taoism body that the wind summoning king had cultivated. After the wind summoning king appeared, the divine light in its eyes kept changing with the passage of time. The dullness in its eyes gradually weakened, and the liveliness in its eyes gradually increased. In the end, it stabilized at the level of an ordinary person. It was not overly intelligent, but not stupid either. After its eyes stabilized at the level of an ordinary person, the wind summoning king bowed to Lei Jiuxiao and said, "Thank you, great immortal, for imparting the cultivation method." Just as its eyes showed, after cultivating the wind summoning body, the wind summoning king's spiritual consciousness was supplemented by the mysterious effect of the cultivation method. It was originally incomplete, and it was raised to the level of an ordinary person. Its intelligence was also raised to the level of an ordinary person during this process. Only then did it know how to bow. Lei Jiuxiao was the one who created the wind summoning avatar, so he naturally knew the effects of the cultivation method. He was not surprised by the wind summoning monarch's reaction at all. He only smiled and said, "There's no need to be so polite. It's a pity that your innate spiritual consciousness is too incomplete. Even after it's been supplemented, you're only an average person. Cultivating the body of wind summoning king is already close to its limit. It's not enough for you to cultivate the other 5 cultivation methods of the innate wind beast. Looks like you're not fated with the body of Emperor Phone." The wind summoning king stood up when he heard Lei Jiuxiao's words. He paused for a long time, as if he was trying hard to understand what Lei Jiuxiao was saying. Only then did he bow and say, "Great immortal, you're too kind. It's already my great fortune to be able to obtain this cultivation method. I don't dare to hope for too much." It was the first time Lei Jiuxiao had heard the wind summoning king refer to himself as a little beast, so he felt rather awkward. Suddenly, it seemed as if a bolt of lightning flashed within his mind, and it illuminated his entire mind before instantly vanishing without a trace, causing his mind to once again return to its previous state. "I seem to have thought of something just now." Lei Jiuxiao knew that it was definitely something extremely specific and important. If he could figure out what he was thinking of just now, it would be extremely beneficial to his future. It might even affect his future path. This matter was simply too important. It was so important that Lei Jiuxiao had no choice but to do everything he could to search and think about it. As a result, he stood there in a daze. He frowned and did not say anything. Lei Jiuxiao didn't say a word, so the Wind Caller King naturally didn't dare to disturb him. Fortunately, while he had the intelligence of an ordinary person, he had just gained it after all. He still retained the simple mentality of the Wind Caller King, so he didn't feel uncomfortable being left out. Instead, he used this time to carefully examine his new body. The more he inspected his body, the happier the Wind Summoning King was. Compared to the body he had in the past, his current body, whether it was in the state of born Taoism aptitude or the state of wind beckoning, did not have much of an increase in strength. It was not much different from before, and it might even be slightly weaker in the state of born Taoism aptitude. However, correspondingly, his current body was tens of thousands of times more agile than before. That feeling of complete control over one's body, that feeling of being able to move all the power inside and outside of one's body according to one's will, that feeling of being able to exert a power that was 100, 1,000, or even 10,000 times stronger than before caused it to be immersed in it, and it felt as if it had simply lived its entire life in vain. I see. Just as the Wind Summoning King was carefully inspecting the state of his body, Lei Jiuxiao suddenly exhaled. A smile of sudden realization appeared on his face. Chapter 504. Tribulation of Demons. Top. Lei Jiuxiao's words startled the Wind Beckoning King. It looked at Lei Jiuxiao in confusion, as if it was trying hard to understand why Lei Jiuxiao would say something like that. Before it could think it through, Lei Jiuxiao smiled and said to the Wind Beckoning King, Ever since you cultivated the cultivation method I taught you, you're no longer a beast. You don't have to call yourself a little beast anymore. Ah, then what am I? The wind beckoning king asked honestly. You are the #1 demon in the primordial world. Lei Jiuxiao chuckled and pointed at the wind beckoning king. As he said this, the space within a radius of several 100 million kilometers suddenly trembled violently. It was as if the world within this area was shaking, and everything was changing because of his words. Although the vibration was limited to a radius of hundreds of millions of miles, the faint fluctuation spread throughout the entire untainted world. Even the endless starry sky above 100,000 miles and the 18 levels of hell below 100,000 miles could clearly sense this inexplicable and mysterious fluctuation. Right at this moment, countless innate gods and post-nate living beings with keen senses looked towards Lei Jiuxiao along the inexplicable waves. Although most living beings could not see this location, the primordial world had developed for so many years. After all, there were some connate gods who had cultivated to unbelievably great powers. As a result, a few gazes passed through the endless void and covered the mountain. Lei Jiuxiao sensed this abnormality and was even more certain of his previous thoughts. He ignored the gazes over, nor did he care about the abnormal tremors and mysterious ripples in the primordial world. He only looked at the wind beckoning king quietly, the #1 demon in the primordial world. When the wind beckoning king heard Lei Jiuxiao's words, he instantly felt his entire mind, consciousness, and sea of consciousness being illuminated by an indescribable bolt of lightning that could not be looked at directly. Demon. This word seemed to be just an ordinary Panga word, but it seemed to condense everything. His past, his present, his future, his descendants, and his endless descendants were all contained in this word. Demon. The wind beckoning king muttered this word repeatedly. During this process, his eyes became brighter and brighter, more and more dazzling. In the end, it was as if there were two flames burning in his eyes. From today onwards, I am a demon. I am the first demon born in the primordial world. Ha ha! Heaven and earth can no longer restrict this demon from obtaining even greater power. Ha ha! After a while, the wind summoning monarch suddenly burst into laughter. As he laughed, the space within a radius of hundreds of millions of miles shook even more violently. The mysterious waves that spread throughout the entire primordial world became even more intense. The supreme existences who had their eyes fixed on this place were even more shocked. In an instant, almost everyone who sensed the changes there understood that they were witnessing an extremely important historical process in the primordial world. Everything that had happened today would probably be talked about endlessly for generations to come. With this realization, the other existences all watched from the side, not daring to disturb him at all. The wind summoning king seemed to have broken through some kind of shackles that were imposed by the world. The aura around him was almost unrestrained, and it skyrocketed endlessly. The power in his body surged endlessly like a tidal wave. Endless giant divine wind was naturally born in the void, condensing into white clouds that circled around his body. Under the illumination of the clouds, the wind summoning king's aura skyrocketed at an even faster speed. All of a sudden, the space within a radius of 1,000,000 miles turned dark. In the sky, a dark cloud suddenly appeared, completely covering an area of 1,000,000 miles. Muffled rumbles kept ringing out from the cloud. An extremely powerful pressure that was enough to make the wind-summoning king lie on the ground and not dare to move came from the cloud. The powerful pressure was even several times more powerful than the pressure released by the sun of lightning previously. However, in the face of such powerful and shocking pressure, the wind-summoning king's reaction was completely different from before. He laughed loudly, and a crazed look gradually appeared on his face. The power in his body surged endlessly, stirring up the boundless Xiantian Yuan Qi in the surrounding void, and stirring up the endless giant Haute divine wind that was born from the void. It made the top of the mountain seem like it was being ravaged by a tornado, shaking the sky and the earth as if it was about to be flattened. However, Lei Jiuxiao was at the top of the mountain after all. Even though Lei Jiuxiao had only casually constructed that wooden house, it naturally contained Lei Jiuxiao's comprehension of the grand Tao of heaven and earth, and it had long since fused with the entire mountain. If one wanted to destroy that wooden house, then they would have to destroy the entire mountain. Clearly, the huge commotion caused by the wind summoning king was not enough to destroy the entire mountain. The power in the wind summoning king's body began to undergo an extremely subtle and mysterious change as he laughed maniacally and changed his mind. When this change was projected, the giant capsule divine wind, which was like many white clouds, also started to change. It was still the giant divine wind, and it still possessed all the characteristics of the giant divine wind. However, its color and aura began to change. The cloud that was originally as white as snow gradually turned jet black. The natural and pure aura that the giant divine wind originally gave off gradually gained an indescribable unyielding and madness. Following this, the jet black clouds that spanned millions of kilometers in the void suddenly trembled. Following this, millions of lightning bolts were produced from the jet black clouds and struck down towards the top of the mountain. Their final target was the wind summoning king. The wind summoning king laughed heartily and raised his hand. The giant divine wind that was still changing around him suddenly charged upwards. In an instant, it condensed into a pocket-shaped magic tool 3 feet above his head. The magic tool flickered continuously. From its initial rough embryonic state, when the millions of lightning bolts in the void arrived around the bag and were about to strike it, it flickered 36 times and turned from a rough embryonic magic tool into a magic tool with 36 layers of restrictions. As the magic tool became perfected, an indescribable suction force was suddenly produced from the magic tool, which was also the opening of the bag. The millions of lightning bolts were affected by this suction force and instantly changed their target. They changed from the wind summoning king that was originally striking down to the bag. In the blink of an eye, a huge funnel seemed to have appeared out of nowhere in the void. Endless lightning bolts that were shining with light followed the huge funnel and shot into the bag in a cone-shaped shape. Soon, they disappeared without a trace. The bag absorbed so much lightning, but it only expanded slightly. Other than that, there were no other changes. The tribulation of demon ascension. Those words suddenly flashed across Lei Jiuxiao's mind as he watched from the side. At the same time, his originally joyful gaze gradually turned solemn. The scene in front of him was clearly the wind summoning king's tribulation transcendence. This tribulation was naturally caused by the wind summoning king becoming the #1 demon in the primordial world. Therefore, it could be called the tribulation of demon ascension. However, the strength of the heavenly tribulation far exceeded his imagination. Such a tribulation is not much different from the heavenly tribulation I experienced when I obtained my Tao fruit. Although the wind summoning king's strength has improved greatly and he understands his own essence, it will probably be difficult for him to survive this tribulation. Lei Jiuxiao secretly calculated. Although the wind summoning king had easily absorbed the millions of lightning bolts into the magic tool and even used the characteristic of wind and lightning to convert them into the power of the magic tool, that was only the first wave of the heavenly tribulation. Seriously speaking, it was just a test of the heavenly tribulation. According to the width of the tribulation cloud and the strength of the first wave of lightning, it was unknown how terrifying the heavenly tribulation strength would be in the final stage. According to the strength comparison, it was almost impossible for the wind summoning king to survive this heavenly tribulation with his current cultivation level. As Lei Jiuxiao pondered, dozens of lightning bolts struck down from the tribulation cloud in the void. Just as he expected, the lightning bolts increased exponentially. By the time Lei Jiuxiao finished thinking, the strength of the lightning bolts was tens of thousands of times stronger than at the beginning. The thunderbolts that blotted out the sky and the earth The attack that was strong enough to destroy the void and turn everything within a radius of a few hundred miles into nothingness, made those innate gods who were observing this mountain peak from far away, with the help of various divine abilities, feel a chill in their hearts. The onlookers were already chilled, but the wind-summoning king, who was enduring the bombardment of the millions of lightning bolts, was still laughing heartily. The magic tool above his head was still absorbing the lightning bolts. It was still using all sorts of mysterious reactions and intricate transformations to convert the lightning bolts into the power of the magic tool. However, compared to the ease with which the first wave of lightning was absorbed, there were no changes after the absorption. At this moment, every time the magic treasure absorbed a wave of lightning, it would shake violently for a long time. It even flickered with light, and its structure was slightly unstable. One could see layers upon layers of restrictions revolving around the magic treasure, doing their best to digest the lightning. It was clearly taking a lot of effort. Lei Jiuxiao sighed inside when he saw this. Although he was only a few dozen meters away from the wind-summoning king, he wasn't affected by the heavenly tribulation at all. He didn't even feel any pressure from it. After all, Lei Jiuxiao was already at the half-step true immortal realm now, and his cultivation was unfathomable. Moreover, the energy in his body was restrained to the extreme and didn't leak at all. Even his aura was faint and practically impossible to sense. Under such circumstances, he was like a rock at the top of the mountain, and it was utterly impossible for his aura to interfere with the heavenly tribulation, so he naturally wouldn't be affected by it. Chapter 505. With Lei Jiuxiao's abilities, it would be extremely easy for him to help the Wind King survive the demonic ascension tribulation. He did not even need to use 1/10,000th of his dermic powers. After all, the demonic ascension tribulation was only equivalent to the heavenly tribulation that Lei Jiuxiao had experienced when he had attained the Earth Immortal Tao fruit. The current Lei Jiuxiao was tens of thousands of times more powerful than when he had attained the Earth Immortal Tao fruit. This heavenly tribulation was naturally nothing to him. However, it was easy to help the Wind King survive the demonic ascension tribulation. The impact of the demonic ascension tribulation was not extremely far-reaching. It was so important that it could even determine Lei Jiuxiao's future path of Tao validation. Lei Jiuxiao could not help but hesitate. He could not be sure. Just as Lei Jiuxiao was thinking, the huge tribulation cloud in the void had already undergone an extremely subtle change. Endless heavenly fire mixed with the endless lightning struck down on the Wind King. Lightning and fire were extremely explosive powers. When the two worked together, the attack was increased by more than 100 times. Such a powerful attack finally made the Wind King stop laughing maniacally. He circulated his connate mystique that had been refined by cultivating the wind-summoning body to its limits. Endless, huge divine wind was born from the void and continuously poured into the wind bag above his head, causing the wind bag to flicker continuously. Its power was greatly increased as it continuously devoured the endless lightning fire. The fire borrowed the power of the wind and lightning coexisted. The nature of the wind bag allowed it to have an extraordinary effect on lightning. It could continuously devour a huge amount of lightning and convert it into its own power, causing the lightning's effect on the Wind King to be weakened to the extreme. However, the wind bag was unable to stop the heavenly fire mixed with the lightning. Although it was barely able to stop the heavenly flames, preventing them from breaking through the defense of the wind bag and affecting the wind-summoning king, it was not able to completely eliminate them. After the lightning fire, the wind bag was surrounded by boundless flames. It was as if it had fallen into the fire and was being burned, about to be reduced to ashes. The Wind King's body gradually floated up. His face was filled with unyielding madness. The power in his body had completely transformed into another nature. The wind bag gradually changed form under the burning of the lightning fire. That power was a kind of demonic power that had never appeared in the primordial world. As for the form that the wind bag had transformed into, It was precisely because of the demonic energy's influence that it had changed into a form that was compatible with the demonic energy, allowing the demonic energy to be more compatible with it, making it even more inseparable from the demonic energy. The appearance of this demonic power and the formation of this demonic artifact meant that the demon tribe had truly appeared in the untainted world. Of course, it also meant that the tribulation of demonic ascension was unstoppable. Demons had never appeared in the primordial world. They were not naturally born in the primordial world. On the other hand, the appearance of demons would definitely occupy the endless destiny of the primordial world and seek the endless resources of the primordial world. The importance of this matter could be imagined. Under such circumstances, the appearance of the demon would naturally trigger a reaction from the primordial world. The supreme great Tao would naturally send down endless tribulations to test it. If it couldn't overcome this tribulation, then the demon would naturally disappear from the world. All traces of it would be erased, and it would be as if it had never existed. If he could survive the tribulation, he would be qualified to live in the primordial world and seek the Tao. Therefore, the heavenly tribulation this time was a critical juncture for the demon race. If they advanced, they would survive. If the Wind King did not survive the heavenly tribulation, not only would he turn into ashes, but the time that the demon appeared in the primordial world would also be delayed indefinitely. It might even never appear in the primordial world again. If he could survive this heavenly tribulation, the existence of the demon race would be recognized by the primordial world. From then on, it would be the same as the other Khanate gods, star beasts, and postnatal life forms. Star beasts were similar to postnatal life forms. They became one of the thousands of races in the primordial world, and they also had the most promising future. Lei Jiuxiao looked at the heavenly tribulation above him and felt the meaning of his next decision. His mind was filled with endless pressure, and he even felt that it was slightly difficult for him to breathe. If I help the Wind King transcend the tribulation, my future destiny and destiny will probably be connected to the demon race. If anything happens to the demon race, I'm afraid I'll be unlucky as well. Lei Jiuxiao thought to himself, unable to make a decision. Although his mental cultivation was astonishing and his cultivation had reached an extremely high level, he could not measure the fate and destiny of the demon race. To connect his fate and destiny with a race that he had no idea of its future was not something that he could deal with indifferently with his mental cultivation. The risk of this matter is so great, but the opportunity is also unimaginably great. If I can obtain the destiny of a race with a bright future, my cultivation in the future will be thousands of times smoother. Forget it. Since I don't know, I'll ask Master for guidance. Lei Jiuxiao finally made his decision. With such a decision, he did not hesitate. With a thought, he silently recited a short mantra. In an instant, he connected with the Yellow Springs network that filled the primordial world and connected every inch of space inside and outside of the primordial world. A mental projection directly entered the virtual world. After entering the virtual world, he did not care about his surroundings. He closed his eyes and moved his mind slightly. He sensed that there were billions of spiritual senses, whether strong or weak, faintly existing in various areas of the primordial world. Above these billions of spiritual senses, there was a faintly discernible spiritual sense that could not be sensed by ordinary living beings, but it filled the entire world and enveloped the infinite space and time in the universe. It enveloped him like a warm sun, making him feel an indescribable sense of intimacy and admiration. He even wanted to be immersed in this feeling that made him sink into it forever. Even if ordinary living beings sensed this spiritual sense, they would not be able to know what it was. However, Lei Jiuxiao was very clear that this spiritual sense came from his master, the supreme existence that suppressed the primordial world and was revered as a Tao master by all living beings in the primordial world, Luo Fan. He even knew that this vast spiritual sense was merely a manifestation of the thoughts emitted by Luo Fan, who is currently comprehending the One. 296 billion dong heavens of the primordial world. After sighing with emotion at his master's incredible power, Lei Jiuxiao did not forget why he had entered this place. With the help of the method that Luo Fan had imparted to him, he included all the problems he had encountered into a thought and transmitted it to Luo Fan. The spiritual sense network in the virtual world was an invisible existence. Even if it gathered the entire primordial world, it could still be transmitted without any time difference. When Lei Jiuxiao's thought was sent out, it was already received by Luo Fan. In that instant, the spiritual sense that enveloped the entire world stirred slightly, even causing the entire virtual world to react violently. It was as if the entire void of the virtual world had suddenly experienced an extremely subtle tremor that no living being could ignore. I see. Suddenly, Lei Jiuxiao seemed to hear a clear voice say in a low voice. At first glance, this voice seemed to be extremely ordinary. However, so long as one carefully comprehended it, one would be able to sense the boundless profundities contained within it. It was only a few syllables, yet it seemed to contain the entire universe and the boundless profundities of the Grand Tao. When one heard this voice, a boundless world that was filled with vitality would naturally appear in one's mind. Chapter 506. Ever since the great calamity of the world, Luo Fan had been in the strange palace inside the Void Wuji Palace, which had already fused with the entire primordial world. With the help of the connection between the strange palace and the 296 billion square meters of worlds that spread across the entire primordial world, he observed the evolution process of these worlds, which he called Dong Tian, from Huanluan to order. No matter how fast the evolution process of a world was, it was not something that could be completed in 1,000 or 2,000 years. Therefore, although more than 3,000 years had passed, to Luo Fan, it was not much different from an instant. The evolution of the 296 billion square meters of worlds was still continuing, and he still felt that his cultivation realm was improving slightly at every moment. His understanding of the world, his understanding of the supreme great Tao, and his comprehension of his own cultivation were all constantly improving. Unknowingly, Luo Fan felt as if he was about to truly attain the Tai true number without realizing it. It seemed that he only lacked the last insignificant opportunity, or perhaps he only lacked a little psychological understanding. This process of comprehension, which was extremely stressful for Lei Jiuxiao and the others, was naturally not much for Luo Fan. After sending them away, he wholeheartedly comprehended the evolution of the 296 billion square meters of worlds, apart from the consciousness he left in the virtual world. On this day, with a thought, he felt that the consciousness he left in the virtual world had received some information related to the evolution process of the entire primordial world. He finally shifted his attention away from the evolution of the 296 billion square meters of worlds in front of him and focused on that bit of information. After thinking about it carefully, Luo Fan had completely grasped the cause and effect of this matter. He even understood the hidden effect of the supreme, great Tao behind this matter. Through various deductions, he had also calculated the impact of this matter in the future. I see. Enlightened, Luo Fan smiled slightly and let out a low chuckle. At this moment, Luo Fan only lacked that bit of psychological understanding to attain the Tai true number. In other words, as long as Luo Fan believed that he had attained the Tai true number, he would attain it. As long as he believed that he could not, he would not attain it. Seriously speaking, there was not much difference between his cultivation realm and the true Tai true number. Under such circumstances, the words that he naturally spoke from his heart contained his understanding of the great Tao of heaven and earth. It was a world of difference from ordinary words. When Lei Jiuxiao heard Luo Fan's words, he instantly felt that the indecisive trouble he had encountered before had become extremely simple. The slight irritation brought about by this trouble also instantly disappeared without a trace. The Tao that he had comprehended over the past few thousand years instantly appeared in his mind. Moreover, it collapsed and recombined at an unimaginable speed to form all sorts of inconceivable and mysterious techniques. Almost at the instant Luo Fan finished speaking, Lei Jiuxiao showed signs of entering the state of enlightenment. At this moment, Luo Fan was in the strange hall inside the Infinite Void Palace, but his attention was focused on the virtual world. When he discovered Lei Jiuxiao's current state, he was first stunned, then came to a sudden realization. Looks like he really hasn't slacked off in the past few thousand years. This thought instantly flashed through his mind. The state of enlightenment was an incomparably mysterious and profound state. It could be extremely long, or it could be extremely short. However, for cultivators who had entered the state of enlightenment, these two things did not have an absolute effect on each other. For cultivators who had entered the state of enlightenment, that originally extremely long period of time could pass in the blink of an eye. And that extremely short period of time could also be stretched out by hundreds of millions of times in their perception, from a time that was originally just a moment to an unknown number of years. At this moment, Lei Jiuxiao happened to be in the second situation. From Luo Fan's point of view, he had only been slightly dazed, as if he had just entered the state of enlightenment, but he immediately regained his senses. His eyes became clear again, and the various changes in his mind completely calmed down. The countless experiences over the years had condensed into an indescribable mysterious seed. To Luo Fan, this mysterious seed was a kind of true meaning of heaven and earth, an existence similar to the massacre true meaning and the thunder true meaning. To Lei Jiuxiao, this was the foundation for him to truly attain the Tai Dao fruit in the future. To him, the importance of this was even comparable to attaining the earthly immortal Dao fruit. In the eyes of Luo Fan, this period of time was just a blink of an eye, but to Lei Jiuxiao, it was a practically endless period of time, and he didn't know how many tens of thousands of years had passed. During this period of time, he had completely lost the concept of time, and he only knew that he was constantly comprehending and condensing the various profundities of the universe and nature that he had comprehended over the past few thousand years. Because he'd lost the concept of time, he'd poured all his energy into it. In the end, after an unknown period of time, he'd finally condensed everything into this incomparably profound seed that seemed to contain everything in his life. Only when he regained his senses and recovered the concept of time did he recall that he had experienced an unknown number of tens of thousands of years in the state of enlightenment. Looks like you already know how to choose, so I won't say anything more. But you must remember that this world has a fixed number, and there are also variables. A fixed number can be changed into a variable, and a variable can also become a fixed number. When Luo Fan saw the light in Lei Jiuxiao's eyes after he returned to his senses, he knew that there was no need for him to say anything more. So he just said one sentence. Lei Jiuxiao trembled when he heard Luo Fan, and then he bowed and said, "Disciple will definitely remember this, and I don't dare to forget it for even a moment." Luo Fan grinned and withdrew his attention. He placed his attention back onto the evolution of the 296 billion square meters of space, and he paid no further attention to Lei Jiuxiao. Lei Jiuxiao already knew how to choose through his previous comprehension. With a command in his mind, the projection of his consciousness in the virtual world dispersed, and his consciousness returned to his body. At the instant his consciousness returned to his body, an imposing aura that shot into the heavens, and the earth suddenly erupted from his body. This imposing aura was ceaselessly rising. It was originally limited to the independent immortal realm, but in just an instant, it had increased by over 10,000 times, and it had far surpassed the independent immortal realm and arrived at the true immortal realm. It was even to the extent that it could be considered as an existence at the peak of the true immortal realm. It was precisely because Lei Jiuxiao had entered the state of enlightenment in the virtual world, and he had finally relied on this comprehension to break through the bottleneck between the independent immortal realm and true immortal realm. He'd taken the half-step that was originally stuck in the independent immortal realm, and he'd truly attained the true immortal realm. Lei Jiuxiao, have transformed a beast into a demon today. From today onwards, the demon clan will exist forever. Lei Jiuxiao looked up into the sky, and then two extremely dazzling bolts of lightning shot out from his eyes. They were like two pillars of light that shot into the sky, and they shot into the tribulation clouds in the sky. Chapter 507. Lei Jiuxiao's words were so shocking that the powerful existences who had gathered their senses there could not help but be shocked. For a moment, countless waves were stirred. The waves caused the energy on the mountain to move violently. It made the mountain, which had already appeared extremely desolate under the tribulation clouds, become even more desolate and difficult to deal with. Lei Jiuxiao ignored the powerful existences who had gathered their senses there. He focused all his attention on the huge changes happening to the tribulation clouds above him. In the instant that Lei Jiuxiao said those words, the space within an area of tens of thousands of kilometers around him suddenly trembled in an obscure and mysterious manner. The inexplicable waves produced by the tremors spread out in all directions. In an instant, they reached every inch of space in the primordial world. This ripple was even more obvious and mysterious than the ripple that the wind-beckoning king produced when he thought that he was a demon. If it was said that only a few of the more sensitive and powerful beings could sense this strange ripple before, then the intensity of this ripple right now was so great that any intelligent being could sense it. It was also at this moment that countless living beings in the primordial world suddenly raised their heads, and their eyes became blank in an instant. It was as if there was something in this world that was very important to them, but they could not understand it at all. A change that they did not know was happening somewhere in the primordial world. This made the countless beings in the primordial world suddenly feel an indescribable emptiness, an indescribable anticipation, or even a tremble of excitement. At that moment, the powerful existences who could sense the changes around Lei Jiuxiao all understood that a new era seemed to have arrived. The tribulation cloud in the sky above Lei Jiuxiao underwent an earth-shattering change in an instant. Countless inexplicable existences surged out of the space and entered the tribulation cloud. In just a few breaths, the tribulation cloud had become more than 10 times denser. Even though the area it enveloped was still 1,000,000 kilometers in radius, its might was hundreds or even thousands of times stronger than before. Under such a powerful aura, the space within the range of the tribulation cloud seemed to have frozen. The Yuan Qi, which was originally extremely strong due to various conditions, was also completely frozen. Everything within 1,000,000 kilometers fell into a state of deathly stillness. Not even the slightest breeze could exist. The wind-beckoning monarch's eyes lit up at this moment. The wind pouch above his head that was wrapped in heavenly fire fluttered slightly. He turned to look at Lei Jiuxiao with an indescribable look in his eyes. Lei Jiuxiao stood where he was and looked up at the sky. The two bolts of lightning were like pillars that connected heaven and earth, piercing into the tribulation clouds above. There was an inexplicable feeling in his heart. In an instant, he understood that the heavenly tribulation had changed its target. It was originally the wind-beckoning king's tribulation of ascension, but now it had become a tribulation that targeted him, a tribulation to test him. It could also be said that after Lei Jiuxiao said that the wind-beckoning king's tribulation of ascension had been successfully passed, the tribulation cloud that still existed in the sky had become Lei Jiuxiao's tribulation. It no longer had anything to do with the wind-beckoning king. "Thank you for saving me, ancestor." The wind-beckoning king was extremely fortunate. He ignored the tribulation cloud in the sky and the wind pouch that was wrapped in heavenly fire above his head. He bowed and shouted. Lei Jiuxiao's words clearly indicated that he was willing to be the ancestor of the demon ancestors. Naturally, he was the ancestor of the number 1 demon of the primordial world. This change was extremely significant. However, at this moment, no existence in the primordial world could sense it. This was because the moment the heavenly tribulation changed and its might increased by hundreds or thousands of times, the senses of the powerful existences were completely isolated. They could no longer sense anything within the range of the tribulation cloud. The moment the wind-beckoning king bowed, the might of the tribulation cloud in the sky increased once again. Endless lightning and fire spread down the two lightning bolts that shot out of Lei Jiuxiao's eyes. They instantly traversed a long distance and rushed into Lei Jiuxiao's eyes along the lightning bolts. With this as a catalyst, the tribulation cloud's changes became even more intense. All these changes interweave together, causing the tribulation cloud to form a huge vortex with these two lightning bolts as the center. Endless complicated changes occurred in the tribulation cloud around the vortex. They turned into all sorts of unbelievable attacks that surged into Lei Jiuxiao's eyes through the two lightning bolts. Lei Jiuxiao stood on the mountain peak. His body was as stable as a mountain. No matter how much lightning, heavenly fire, divine wind, true water, and other powers surged into his eyes through the lightning bolts, he did not waver at all. His eyes were like two huge black holes that were madly swallowing everything that the tribulation clouds emitted. This process continued without end. 2 hours, 4 hours, 1 day, 2 days, after 9 days and 9 nights, the tribulation clouds in the sky had become extremely thin. Even though it still enveloped an area of 500,000 kilometers, and even the might it emitted wasn't much different from when it was at the beginning, it was obvious that the tribulation clouds had already arrived at the final stage and were about to disperse. Lei Jiuxiao did not make any movements during these 9 days and 9 nights. He stood at the top of the mountain and looked up at the sky. Two lightning bolts pierced into the tribulation cloud above like the pivot of heaven and earth, allowing the boundless power in the tribulation cloud to surge into his eyes. This method of transcending the tribulation had never appeared in the primordial world before. Even when Luo Fan was going through the heavenly tribulation, he had to rely on the power of his body and the strength of his body to resist it. He did not dare to ignore the heavenly tribulation and absorb it into his body without any effort. It could be said that Lei Jiuxiao's method of transcending the tribulation was unprecedented. Any living creature with the slightest bit of intelligence will be able to tell whether this was a success or not. The existence of the tribulation cloud was the proof. If this method failed to block the tribulation and he did not have the power to transcend it, then Lei Jiuxiao would have been killed by the tribulation. How could he have stood under it for 9 days and 9 nights? At this moment, the vortex formed by the tribulation cloud in the sky suddenly stopped. Then, as if an indescribable suction force was generated from the center of the vortex, the tribulation cloud rapidly shrank and shrank. From its original radius of 1,000,000 miles, it compressed into 2 spheres with a radius of 10 feet. It took less than 10 breaths of time. After the 2 spheres were formed, they did not stop and directly rushed into the 2 lightning bolts. As they disintegrated the 2 lightning bolts, they approached Lei Jiuxiao's eyes. They were so fast that they almost surpassed the speed of time. It was as if they had already rushed into Lei Jiuxiao's eyes the moment they were formed. As the 2 spheres rushed in, Lei Jiuxiao's body erupted with an extremely intense light, like a blazing sun hanging high in the sky. At the same time, an earth-shattering howl surged out of Lei Jiuxiao's mouth, shaking the world. Chapter 508. As the howl rang out, the light around Lei Jiuxiao gradually receded. The changes in his eyes were even faster and even more astonishing. The lightning that had been flashing his eyes had undergone an earth-shattering transformation. At this moment, there were countless lights flashing in his eyes. Countless rays of light interweaved, as though 2 complete and vast worlds had been opened up. That was exactly what happened. Over the past 9 days and 9 nights, the tribulation clouds in the sky had unleashed countless attacks of different natures. Every single attack was shockingly destructive. Just one of them was enough to instantly obliterate the Wind Summoner King, who'd cultivated the wind summoner physique and had even transformed into the greatest demon of the primordial universe. Such a powerful attack lasted for 9 days and 9 nights. Almost every moment, there would be dozens of attacks falling from the sky, blasting straight into Lei Juxiao's eyes. From this, it was clear just how great the power that had blasted into his eyes over the past 9 days and 9 nights had been. These attacks were all-encompassing, containing almost all the natures of power that could exist in the primordial universe. All of these powers were needed to form the primordial universe, to form a complete world. When Lei Jiuxiao used the profound method he'd comprehended to draw these powers into his eyes and wove them together according to some profound method, the powers interacted with each other. Under the influence of the supreme Great Tao, they naturally constructed 2 miniature worlds. Although the 2 miniature worlds were so small that they could only exist in his eyes, they completely contained all of the power of the heavenly tribulation. They even produced some kind of unimaginable power, allowing Lei Jiuxiao's eyes to possess all sorts of inconceivable abilities. It could be said that Lei Jiuxiao's method of overcoming the tribulation wasn't to block or eliminate the tribulation. Instead, he had opened up a space to contain the tribulation's energy and absorb all of the tribulation's energy, allowing the tribulation's energy to wreak havoc within it. The tribulation was still searching for him in an attempt to kill him, but wouldn't be eliminated. As long as the energy within leaked out, it would immediately blast towards Lei Jiuxiao, wanting to continue what had been unfinished today and completely obliterate him. As a result, while Lei Jiuxiao appeared to have survived the heavenly tribulation, he had actually used some kind of mysterious trick to deceive the tribulation, allowing the boundless power that it had unleashed to become the source of power for his eyes. After the long howl, Lei Jiuxiao stood there quietly. His eyes turned slightly as he looked at a certain spot in the void. At this moment, the world in Lei Jiuxiao's eyes had undergone some sort of indescribable, mysterious, and extremely important change. The surrounding innate origin chi, chaotic origin chi, star essence chi, and other types of origin chi were clearly revealed to him. With a casual grab, he seemed to be able to grab any wisp of yuan chi he needed. With a thought, the trajectory of the power in the void was revealed without reservation. It was even to the extent that he could faintly see the threads hidden in the void. There were the various laws that formed the primordial world. They contained boundless profundities, and even the supreme Tao was contained within them. This was already the initial stage of the world that Luo Fan had seen after attaining the primordial Tao fruit. The world that Lei Jiuxiao saw was billions of times simpler and cruder than the world that Luo Fan had seen after attaining the primordial Tao fruit. If he had to use an analogy to describe it, then the world that Lei Jiuxiao saw was a curved line drawn on a piece of white paper, while what Luo Fan saw was an extremely complicated world painting. It could be said that there was no comparison between the two at all. However, he had already seen a bit of the primordial world's true appearance. After all, it had already surpassed almost all perfected immortals, and even golden immortals were inferior to him in this aspect. From this, it could be seen just how profound the 2 eyes that Lei Jiuxiao had created were. It's a pity that it's still not as good as Masters Pangu's chaotic heavenly pupils. Lei Jiuxiao sighed. This pair of eyes could indeed see through a trace of the prehistorical void, but that was all. Compared to the Pan-Gu chaotic heavenly eyes, this pair of eyes didn't have any other powers, not even the first level of the Pan-Gu chaotic heavenly eyes. Of course, this referred to the incredible power of seeing through the past and the future. For example, the minor powers of seeing through barriers and appearances were still present in the eyes that Lei Jiuxiao had created. After sighing emotionally, Lei Jiuxiao withdrew his gaze and looked towards the wind-beckoning king, who had been kneeling before him for 9 days and 9 nights. Seeing Lei Jiuxiao look over, the wind-beckoning king hurriedly bowed again and said, Wind beckoning congratulates ancestor on passing the heavenly tribulation and improving greatly in power. Rise. Lei Jiuxiao's expression was calm. He casually lifted the wind beckoning king up with a wave of power. Although the wind summoning king already possessed the intelligence of an ordinary person, and after a period of development, he would definitely be able to possess extremely complicated thoughts. He was only at the beginning of his intelligence. In Lei Jiuxiao's eyes, his thoughts were like black dots on a piece of white paper. He could instantly understand them with a single glance. As a result, although the wind beckoning king's words were without a head or tail, he completely understood what the wind beckoning king was thinking. Naturally, there was no need to ask further. "Thank you, ancestor." The wind beckoning king stood up and said very respectfully. After Lei Jiuxiao made way for the wind beckoning king, he said to the void, "Today is the birth of the demon race. Since the few of you are witnesses, you can no longer stay out of it. I wonder if you can show yourselves?" As soon as he said that, a few strange sighs sounded out of nowhere and entered Lei Jiuxiao and the wind beckoning king's ears. Following that, the yuan qi in the void surged and 18 medium-sized vortexes appeared. Within the vortexes, boundless innate energy continuously gathered together with a certain strange power in the void. Gradually, a mysterious existence was formed within the vortexes. The suction force produced by the vortexes was extremely great. As they revolved, they revealed different techniques, but all of them were extremely profound, displaying various unimaginable techniques. After several dozen breaths, the vortexes gradually stopped. The innate energy gathered by the 18 vortexes also gradually dissipated, revealing the mysterious existence that had gathered a tremendous amount of innate energy and various strange powers. There were 18 figures. Chapter 509. When the tribulation clouds in the sky completely shrank and charged into Lei Jiuxiao's eyes along with the lightning, the power that locked down the void completely disappeared. With the power that locked down the void gone, the location naturally could not stop the many powerful existences from spying on it. As a result, after Lei Jiuxiao completely absorbed the heavenly tribulation into his eyes, everything that happened on the mountain was sensed by over a dozen strands of consciousness. Lei Jiuxiao did not show any reaction to the spying of these strands of consciousness in the beginning, pretending to be unaware. However, when he spoke just now, it was like a sharp sword pointing at the strands of consciousness. The owners of these strands of consciousness immediately felt an indescribable pressure acting on their hearts. The owners of these strands of consciousness were at least peak true immortals. Apart from a few, they were all innate gods. They were extremely revered existences among them, and they had a greater understanding of the lofty existence behind Lei Jiuxiao than other living beings. As a result, the moment they felt the pressure acting on their hearts, they immediately understood that they had been pulled into the birth of the demons without them realizing it. It was because of this understanding that they had no choice but to use some profound techniques to condense various types of energy into a projection of their consciousness to meet Lei Jiuxiao. An old man in Taoist robes was the first to take form. He stood on an auspicious cloud and smiled at Lei Jiuxiao. "I didn't think we'd be unknowingly tricked by you. Senior Tai Long, you're too kind. Although I've used some tricks, it's not necessarily a bad thing for you. Perhaps it'll become a fortuitous encounter for you to break through your current realm." Lei Jiuxiao chuckled. The owners of these strands of consciousness had gotten involved mainly because they were too curious. They had come to watch Lei Jiuxiao and the wind beckoning monarch undergo their tribulations, so they did not really have much to do with Lei Jiuxiao. However, what was the point of fighting over such words? Since they felt that they had lost face and wanted to vent a little through words, Lei Jiuxiao would let them vent. To Lei Jiuxiao, he only needed to be a little more tactful with his words, but it was very likely that they would help him wholeheartedly. Why not? As for the old man's identity, it was even simpler. He was just an innate god who had cultivated in the space-time illusion set up by Luo Fan. Forget it. Over the past thousands of years, the environment of the primordial world had undergone a huge change. As a result, many innate gods had disappeared. An unremarkable existence stood out from the crowd and achieved supreme skills, surpassing the many innate gods. He became a powerful existence that played an important role in the primordial world. Taoist Tai Long was such an existence. Cultivators all had photographic memories. Although Taoist Tai Long was not outstanding in the past, he had once cultivated in the space-time illusion. Lei Jiuxiao had naturally seen it before. Now, when he saw the projection's appearance and aura, he instantly recognized Taoist Tai Long. I don't deserve to be addressed as senior. Fellow Taoist is now a demon ancestor and has obtained the great fortune of heaven and earth. In the future, I'm afraid we will have to rely on Taoist Fellow's protection. It's better for Taoist Fellow to address us as such. Taoist Tai Long waved his hand and smiled. However, he very wisely expressed his absolute support. Lei Jiuxiao smiled faintly and did not refute it. Although he was an innate god, he was still a celestial emperor. But after cultivating the Tao of Tao taught by Luo Fan, his life essence had far surpassed most innate gods. Although Taoist Tai Long's background was better than his, and his current cultivation realm was slightly higher than his, he was not afraid of him. He even had the confidence that if they were to fight, he could easily subdue him and even kill him. Under such circumstances, it was impossible for him to be too respectful towards this Taoist Tai Long. Addressing him as a fellow Taoist was exactly what he wanted. As Taoist Tai Long expressed his attitude, the projection avatars of those powerful existences in the surroundings also took shape. He is indeed the disciple of a famous master. No wonder he is the disciple of Lord Luo Fan. A woman with a cold face that made people feel as if they were a block of ice said indifferently, "Senior Tongping, you flatter me. I only received some superficial knowledge from Master." "I'm truly ashamed to face Master," said Lei Jiuxiao sternly. The woman in front of him was different from Taoist Tai Long. She had stood out in the space-time illusion and was selected by Luo Fan to guard the untainted land during the Great Calamity. She became famous thousands of years before Taoist Tai Long and had many relationships with Luo Fan, so Lei Jiuxiao had to respect her. "No need to be humble. You don't need to call me senior. You are now in the realm of true immortals and a member of the monster clan. You're qualified to address us as peers. Don't decline, lest you ruin the reputation of Lord Luo Fan," said Tongping indifferently. Luo Fan's title of Lord Tao came from the thorns that guarded the virtual world. At first, only some postnatal living beings called him that. But as time passed, as the incredible power of the virtual world became more and more known to many living beings, Luo Fan's incredible power gradually became deeply rooted in people's hearts. The title of Lord Tao also gradually became recognized. Therefore, at this moment, even though they were also innate gods, they even had a relationship with Luo Fan a long time ago. They were the first batch of innate gods who met Luo Fan. They also recognized Luo Fan's status as a lord who had transcended all living beings in the primordial world and respected him as a Lord Tao. Since Tongping had already mentioned Luo Fan's reputation, Lei Jiuxiao naturally could not say anything else. He could only bow slightly and thank Tongping. These powerful existences were at least in the realm of true immortals, and they were all at the peak of the realm of true immortals. Each of them could easily kill dozens of existences of the same level. It could be said that they were the most powerful group of living beings in the primordial world. Of course, there were some powerful innate gods, such as the god of Buzhou Mountain and Yusu. They were so high that they could only look up to them. However, the god of Buzhou Mountain and the others had already been in seclusion for thousands of years. They had not come out since the great tribulation of heaven and earth, so there was no need to consider them. Since they were the most powerful group of existences in the primordial world, they were at the same level and naturally had a deep understanding of each other. The others naturally knew how powerful Tongping was. At this moment, Tongping was clearly supporting Lei Jiuxiao, which made them truly understand that Lei Jiuxiao's current status was completely different from before. For a moment, the few who originally wanted to embarrass Lei Jiuxiao changed their plans. After appearing, they did not do much to vent their anger. They only said a few words indifferently, and then floated in the void with their respective supernatural powers, quietly waiting for Lei Jiuxiao's explanation. With their appearance, all the white mist formed by the giant capsule divine wind at the top of the mountain was impacted by a powerful force. Most of it dissipated and disappeared without a trace. Only a few of the tougher and pure giant capsule divine wind attached to the mountain, turning into a thin layer that stuck to the mountain. This made the mountain seem as if it had been tempered into a white mountain range. It looked crystal clear and emitted a warm aura. Chapter 510. Lei Jiuxiao stood on the white mountain peak and casually gestured, saying, "Since everyone is here, why don't you come in and have a discussion so that we can decide what to do in the future? What do you think?" "That's how it should be." Daoist Tai Long smiled and said directly. As he spoke, he took a light step forward and instantly crossed a distance of dozens of feet, directly arriving in front of Lei Jiuxiao. As Daoist Tai Long expressed his stance, Tong Ping and the others did not hesitate. They each used their divine abilities and controlled their mental projection avatars to cross a long or short distance, arriving on a mountain peak and standing still. However, although their actions were rather cooperative, their expressions were not very happy. Instead, most of them were rather unwilling. This was natural. These existences had at least reached the peak of the true immortal realm. In the current untainted world, they were definitely considered to have an extremely high status. If they wanted to split the land and establish themselves, each of them could occupy at least hundreds of billions of miles of untainted world. Such powerful existences were originally cultivating well. But because of a moment of curiosity, they came to observe the tribulation of becoming a demon here and had no choice but to participate in a major event that they were not mentally prepared for. Even if the success of this major event might bring them great benefits, it would definitely not make them, who were pursuing self-transcendence, happy. Lei Jiuxiao naturally understood the mentality of these powerful existences, so his attitude was not the slightest bit overbearing. Instead, it seemed like he was asking everyone to cooperate with him. To him, this change in attitude was nothing. Compared to the benefits that he was about to obtain, this was not a grievance at all. There was also a wooden house on a mountain peak, but this wooden house was casually built by Lei Jiuxiao to shelter himself from the wind and rain. Although the area was not small, if it was used to accommodate 18 powerful existences, it would be a little crowded. Therefore, when the 18 powerful existences landed on the mountain peak, Lei Jiuxiao casually waved his hand. The wooden house collapsed with a loud bang. Then, because of the pressure of the 18 powerful existences, the giant reticulated divine wind that stuck to the surface of the mountain peak and dyed the mountain like white jade quickly gathered at the top of the mountain peak. In the blink of an eye, it fused with the wood produced by the collapse of the wooden house and began to reassemble at an extremely fast speed. Not long after, a towering palace that exuded an endless aura was built on the mountain peak. The entire process was extremely natural, and there wasn't even the slightest trace of power interference. It was as if it had been born naturally, like a tree growing from the ground. However, it was even easier and more profound than when Lei Jiuxiao had constructed the wooden house. That was only natural. When Lei Jiuxiao was building the wooden house, his cultivation realm had not broken through yet. He was only a half-step true immortal. But now, he had crossed that half-step and become a true immortal. How many times had his cultivation level increased compared to before? His actions were naturally much more profound than before. Seeing Lei Jiuxiao's actions, Daoist Tai Long and the others could not help but be slightly shocked. It was not difficult for them to build such a palace on the top of the mountain. Even if they wanted to build a more majestic, grand, and luxurious palace, it would not be difficult for them. However, it wasn't something they could do in such a relaxed and natural manner, as expected of the disciple of Tao Master Luo Fan. He has just reached the realm of true immortals, yet he already possesses such remarkable powers. Taoist Tai Long's mind flashed with such thoughts, and he could not help but become even more determined about his choice. He chuckled and said, "This palace is majestic and grand. Although it looks simple, it is quite charming. It could be used as a mountain residence. What do you all think?" The people present were all people with extremely high cultivation and had seen many things. After seeing Lei Jiuxiao's power, they gradually dispelled their previous grudges. At least, this person in front of them had enough strength and enough potential to bring them benefits. Cooperating with this person in front of them was not something unacceptable. Therefore, a seemingly gentle woman immediately followed up. "That's right. Although this hall is good, it doesn't have a name. Why don't we discuss a name with it?" This woman was also an innate god. Her name was Sha Zhen. Although her cultivation realm was the lowest among everyone present, no one dared to ignore her. In fact, almost everyone was most unwilling to fight her. The reason for this was because of his background. When Sha Zhen was born, she was accompanied by a stalk of 5 essence flower that possessed mysterious power. In the hundreds of thousands of years after its birth, because it didn't know the mysteries of the 5-spirit flower, it could only use its own power to refine it into a magic tool, but couldn't truly unleash its incredible power. The many innate gods that couldn't be in the time and space illusion, he stood out from the crowd. And in the thousands of years after the great calamity of the world, because of the blossoming of 100 flowers, countless magic arts were created. Her luck was extremely good, and her luck was astonishing. She coincidentally obtained a magic art that just happened to be suitable for this magic tool, causing the 5 exquisite flower to be reborn and refined into a treasure that could achieve Tao. In other words, the body of the magic tool itself became the body of the magic tool, but the spirit of the magic tool was attached to it, and the spirit of the magic tool was used as the treasure spirit, becoming a kind of magic tool. After obtaining this treasure, Sha Zhen's cultivation realm was not very high, but her strength had increased by many times. It was enough for her to be on par with many of the powerful existences present. Hearing Sha Zhen's words, Taoist Tai Long chuckled and said, Yes, Taoist Sha Zhen, this is the main point. Why don't we call it the Ancestral Demon Hall?" The indifferent Tong Ping directly suggested. "This name is great. Although it's not extravagant, it's easy to understand and goes straight to the point." "Wonderful," Taoist Tai Long praised. The other few powerful existences, who were originally unable to make up their minds, knit their brows together when they heard the few of them echo each other. They instantly made up their minds. What Taoist Tai Long and the others did was the best way to express their stance. It proved that they absolutely supported Lei Jiuxiao. The others weren't idiots. Since the situation had developed this way, they naturally knew which choice would be the most beneficial for them. Thus, after hearing this, everyone either tacitly agreed or nodded. Although they didn't agree on the spot, they expressed their own choice. Seeing everyone like this, Lei Jiuxiao smiled and said, "Since everyone has agreed, Jiuxiao naturally has no objections." With that, he casually waved his hand, and a wave of power condensed in the void. It quickly gathered above the hall and gradually turned into a plaque. There were 4 huge gilded Pangu characters on the plaque. Ancestral Demon Hall. Seeing the 4 characters form, the wind beckoning king suddenly burst into tears. His knees went soft, and he knelt on the ground. His body collapsed as he sobbed. At the same time, the demonic power in his body trembled endlessly. Like boiling oil thrown into clear water, it seemed like it could explode at any time and blast him into pieces. With everyone's cultivation realm, they instantly knew that the wind-beckoning king's heart was trembling, and he couldn't control his own power. They couldn't help but sigh. Chapter 511. The wind-beckoning king's performance was like a lonely living being in the world who had found his roots and where he belonged. To the connate gods present, to postnatal living beings, they more or less felt like they were in the same boat. After all, there was no need to talk about the postnatal living beings. Although there were tens of thousands of them, every connate god, seriously speaking, They were unique existences in the world. In the primordial world, there were no other living beings who were truly of the same race as them. Under such circumstances, to Kane gods? Of course, they would occasionally feel as lonely as the wind beckoning king. However, it was not as intense as the wind beckoning kings. However, they were not on the same level as the wind beckoning king. They could only sigh when they saw the wind beckoning king's performance. After sighing, they did not stop. They directly passed by the wind beckoning king, crossed the door, and entered the ancestral demon palace. This hall was extremely wide, and the furnishings inside were extremely simple and unadorned. It didn't seem luxurious at all, but it made one feel as if it was filled with an indescribable atmosphere. The living beings inside were unknowingly affected by this atmosphere, and their minds also became broadened. Everyone present was a powerful existence at the top of the primordial world. There is no need to describe their cultivation realm. As soon as they saw the furnishings of the hall, they knew that the hall had fused with Lei Jiuxiao's countless insights into the great Tao of heaven and earth. It contained all sorts of unbelievable mysteries. It was precisely because of this that such an infectious power appeared. Sensing this, everyone's ill feelings towards Lei Jiuxiao lessened a little. After all, being able to fuse his countless insights into the great Tao of heaven and earth into the hall represented Lei Jiuxiao's sincerity. It represented how much he valued the demon race. The possibility of them obtaining benefits by joining was also greater. There were 18 thrones in the hall, and they formed a circle around the hall. There was no difference between the thrones. They were all the same height, but they had different styles. Some were ferocious, some dignified, some ethereal, and some murderous. It was obvious that Lei Jiuxiao had specially designed the style of the throne according to the characteristics of the people present. As soon as everyone saw these thrones, they knew where they should be, so they didn't say anything and just sat down on their respective thrones. Lei Jiuxiao's throne was naturally in the center. This was inevitable. After all, Lei Jiuxiao was the master of this place. Although there was no difference between the thrones, there was still a need to pay attention to the positions. After sitting down, the wind beckoning monarch walked in. As soon as he entered the hall, the wind summoning king's body shook violently. He felt an indescribable pressure appear from space, pressing down on his mind. He felt his mind tremble and his body go limp. He could not control himself at all. After the wind summoning king became the greatest demon in the primeval times, an unyielding and arrogant will to fight against the heavens and the earth appeared in his heart. If he felt such pressure anywhere else, it would only arouse his dissatisfaction and resistance. He would rather die than submit. However, this was the ancestral demon palace, an existence that had shaken him to the core and made him unable to control himself. Under this pressure, he succumbed. Immediately, the wind-summoning king knelt on the ground under this pressure, not daring to get up. The Wind King's choice wasn't hard to understand. His choice was just like how a person who didn't want to kneel, who didn't believe, and who looked down on ghosts and gods would definitely kneel during their parents' funeral. It wasn't because he surrendered, but because he was driven by his emotions. Seeing the wind-summoning king like this, Lei Jiuxiao nodded and said, "Since you're the greatest demon in the primeval times, you have to bear the responsibility of being the greatest demon in the primeval times. Now, you can leave first. Pass down the technique that I passed to you to the wind-summoning clan and the rest of the demon race." Hearing that, the wind-summoning king was overjoyed. He kowtowed in excitement and replied, "Yes, Patriarch." Lei Jiuxiao waved his hand, and the wind-summoning king hurriedly stood up and retreated out of the ancestral demon palace. Then he turned around and turned into a black giant divine wind capsule, heading towards the mountain peak not far away. There were countless wind-summoning kings who did not dare to move because of the tribulation of demon ascension and the aura of Taoist Tai Long and the rest. They were also the group of wind-summoning king that was previously ruled by the wind-summoning king. The wind-summoning king was many times stronger than before he was captured by Lei Jiuxiao. Although his power was not much stronger than before, the aura he exuded was incomparable to before. He arrived at the mountain peak and released his aura. The wind-summoning kings roared in unison, expressing the highest degree of submission. The wind-summoning king remembered Lei Jiuxiao's instructions and immediately activated the cultivation technique of the wind-summoning body. He released his demonic power and enveloped the entire mountain peak. Being enveloped by the demonic power, the wind-summoning kings felt like it was the end of the world. It was as though they could collapse and die at any time. However, they could not resist. Among them, a small number of wind-summoning kings produced wisps of black power under the pressure. They interweaved with the demonic power emitted by the wind-summoning king, allowing the wind-summoning king to sense it. When the wind-summoning king saw this, he was overjoyed. He grabbed out casually, and the 30-odd wind-summoning beasts lined up and were pulled up to the same height as him. I didn't expect there to be so many wind-summoning kings with the potential to become demons. Looks like I'm one step closer to completing the ancestors' instructions. The wind-summoning king murmured joyfully. The method he used just now was a method to search for demons that he had naturally comprehended after transcending the tribulation of becoming a demon. This method could borrow the influence of demonic power to allow beasts with the potential to become demons to produce their first strand of demonic chi. This allowed him to distinguish these beasts with the potential to become demons from other beasts. Of course, this kind of potential was not innate, nor was it unchangeable. The wind-summoning kings that did not have the potential to become demons right now could not become demons. They just needed opportunities and time to grow and evolve. However, this did not mean that they had no hope of becoming demons. Compared to the wind-summoning kings that already had the potential to become demons, it was still 1,000 times more difficult to become demons. But there was still hope after all. Lei Jiuxiao's cultivation method for the wind-summoning physique had long since become a cultivation method for the wind-summoning clan to become a demon after being tempered and modified by the demon ascension tribulation. Apart from having the mystical quality of combining with the other 5 cultivation methods to form the wind-summoning physique of the Heavenly Wind Emperor, it was the best cultivation method for the wind-summoning clan to cultivate a demon body. These wind-summoning kings with the potential to become demons were naturally more intelligent than the other wind-summoning kings, but they still could not compare to the wind-summoning king. Hence, this Wind King technique didn't mix with them at all. With a casual point of his finger, streams of demonic chi containing the most basic part of the wind-summoning technique directly rushed into the bodies of the wind-summoning techniques, transforming them into the instincts of the wind-summoning techniques, guiding them to absorb all sorts of yuan chi in the air and convert them into demonic chi, refining their bodies and changing their intrinsic qualities. Chapter 512. After Lei Jiuxiao ordered the wind-summoning king to teach the demon technique, he said to the experts present, "Fellow Taoists, what do you think about the birth of the demon clan?" His tone was very calm, but when Taoist Tai Long and the others heard it, they knew that Lei Jiuxiao was testing them. After all, although they were all at the peak of the perfected immortal realm, there were definitely differences in their knowledge. It was impossible for them to completely understand the context of this matter. Lei Jiuxiao asked this to know the extent of everyone's understanding of the demon clan. If they could understand it clearly, it would naturally be good, and Lei Jiuxiao could arrange what to do. If they could not, the outcome would probably be completely different. Knowing what Lei Jiuxiao meant, Taoist Tai Long and the others looked at each other and smiled. "Fellow Taoist, why do you need a test? When the demon clan is born, there will be a tribulation. This already means that the demon clan has great luck. If the plan is good, there will be endless benefits. If the plan is bad, I'm afraid that we will be doomed eternally." Everyone seemed to have communicated with each other through some extremely obscure means. At this moment, Taoist Tai Long was the one who spoke. Lei Jiuxiao's expression did not change at all when he heard Taoist Tai Long's words. Obviously, he was not too satisfied with this answer. Or rather, he felt that Taoist Tai Long still had many contents that he did not say. Taoist Tai Long was slightly shocked when he saw Lei Jiuxiao's performance. Suddenly, he came to a realization. The person in front of him was not a Khanate god like them. Normally, he was a cultivator who was raised by heaven and earth and sought alone. Instead, he was the disciple of the person who was respected as a Tao lord by the entire primordial world. His knowledge was at least tens of thousands of times richer than what they had previously thought. The meaning of the birth of the demon clan might be complicated and obscure in the eyes of other living beings, but in his eyes, it was as obvious as looking at the lines on his palm. After understanding this, Taoist Tai Long made a prompt decision and decided to spit out everything he knew. He immediately said, "Of course, the most important thing about the birth of the demon clan is about the main character of the world." At this point, Taoist Tai Long was unwilling and did not need to continue. When the others heard Tai Long Taoist's words, a slight surprise appeared on their faces. However, this surprise was because Tai Long Taoist had mentioned this matter and not because of the matter itself. Just by looking at their expressions, one could tell that what Taoist Tai Long had said was something they had discussed and deduced. When Lei Jiuxiao heard Taoist Tai Long's words, he was shocked. Lightning flashed in his eyes as he stared at Taoist Tai Long for a good while. Then, he laughed, "So everyone already knows about it. Looks like the true foundation of our cooperation has already been formed." When everyone heard this, their expressions did not change, but their eyes were filled with awe. The concept of the protagonists of the world was something that the 18 of them had come up with after spending a long time in the virtual world. It was the only concept that could explain why there were so many abnormalities in the birth of the demon race. It was precisely because of this that they were unwilling to directly reveal this concept to Lei Jiuxiao from the very beginning. Instead, they wanted to conceal this concept. It was also why they were so surprised when Taoist Tai Long Taoist spoke. Lei Jiuxiao actually already knew about this concept that they had only grasped after discussing and deducing for a long time. In fact, he seemed to know it even more clearly than them. How could they not be awed by this? How could they not be shocked? Does having a master give him such a huge advantage? This person's process of becoming a true immortal was right under our noses, yet he can actually understand something that we would need to spend tens of thousands of years of cultivation to deduce. For a moment, only similar thoughts flashed in everyone's minds. Lei Jiuxiao did not care about everyone's expressions. He smiled and said, "The foundation of this matter has been determined. Then, let us discuss what to do next to avoid danger and obtain benefits. I don't know what everyone thinks, but I can speak." Worldly pleasantries and hypocrisy were completely meaningless to existences of their level. Lei Jiuxiao naturally would not waste any time on such things, so he got straight to the point and went straight to the point. Everyone present was a manifestation of will condensed from various kinds of vitality. Due to the haste of the matter, these manifestations were not too condensed. They twisted and trembled slightly as their minds and wills fluctuated. This caused the ancestral demon palace to appear rather illusory and mystical. Shazhan was a treasure refined with the help of the 5-spirit flower, which was why she had the power to fight against everyone. Her true cultivation was rather lacking, so her body was also the most illusory. The fluctuation of her mind and wills was also the greatest. After her body twisted and changed for a long time, she said, "Right now, the wind-beckoning king is the only one left in the demon race. No matter how promising he is in the future, it will definitely be difficult for him to achieve anything. I think what we should do is first increase the number of demons." That's right. The surrounding people nodded in agreement when they heard Shazhan's words. Even if that's the case, the demon clan is formed from the cultivation of countless kinds of strange beasts. Every kind of strange beast has a different physique. In order to turn these strange beasts into the demon clan, the cultivation method required is different. What should we do? I wonder if anyone has a feasible solution? Lei Jiuxiao smiled and said, "Seeing how confident you are, you must have a solution. Just say it," Taoist Tai Long said with a smile. Taoist Tai Long's seniority was extremely high, and his cultivation was also the most profound. He had a rather high status among the 18 people. Although he could not be the leader of the other 17 people, his opinions would not be easily refuted. Therefore, he had always been the one to answer Lei Jiuxiao. Huh? Lei Jiuxiao chuckled when he heard Daoist Tai Long's words and said, "What I mean is that we should carefully comprehend the essence of the demon race and use it to derive a basic cultivation method that can transform all beasts into demons. We will then announce it to the world and let the demon race comprehend the cultivation method on their own and develop naturally. We'll talk about the future when they are accomplished in their cultivation. Although this method is feasible, isn't it too pessimistic?" A middle-aged man who was surrounded by the silhouette of a river frowned and said, "That's right. The development of the demon race is of great importance. If we allow it to develop as it is very likely that it will go astray and bring us a lot of trouble in the future." Another young man who seemed to have a beast swimming in his body frowned as well. The others looked at Lei Jiuxiao as well, waiting to see how he would answer. Clearly, they were quite worried about what the two of them were talking about. What everyone is worried about is quite reasonable, but that is something we will have to do in the future. The foundation of our plan is the existence of the demon race, so we naturally need a large number of them. Apart from this method, I can't think of any other way to increase the number of the demon race as quickly as possible. As for how to prevent the demon race from going astray and bringing us trouble, we can discuss and deduce in detail. It is not impossible to avoid it. Lei Jiuxiao smiled. Chapter 513. Can you explain? The middle-aged man who was shrouded in the illusion of a river frowned and asked. Everyone present was knowledgeable and could naturally see the drawbacks of the demonic race's foundation, which was indescribably huge. Lei Jiuxiao's words naturally could not dispel all of their worries. Lei Jiuxiao smiled and looked at the different expressions of the people present. However, all of them were more or less hesitant. He casually pointed down and said, "Everyone, have you forgotten that there is a virtual world in the primordial world?" Daoist Tai Long and the others could not help but come to a sudden realization when they heard Lei Jiuxiao's words. Their hesitation from before had completely disappeared. The difficulty of cultivation after attaining the Tao could be seen from the fact that there were millions of itinerant immortal cultivators in the primordial world, but only a few dozen perfected immortals. These 18 existences at the peak of the true immortal realm were able to cultivate to such an extraordinary realm in a short period of a few thousand years. Talent and fortuitous encounters were naturally important, but what was even more important was their hearts that pursued the Tao wholeheartedly and their thousands of years of painstaking cultivation. It was precisely because of this painstaking cultivation that they naturally could not devote too much effort to the various changes in the outside world. Just like the changes in the primordial world, the virtual world, and the Yellow Springs network that covered the entire primordial world, although they knew of its existence, its various conveniences, and its various inconceivable mysteries, they could not spend too much time thinking about how they could use it. They naturally thought of using the connection in the virtual world to discuss the Tao, but other things, such as using the conveniences to guide the demonic race, were not something they could think of in a short time. Although Lei Jiuxiao did not say too much, everyone present was not ordinary. As long as he pointed out the key points, everything would naturally be no more difficult. Immediately, everyone expressed their agreement with Lei Jiuxiao's idea. They wanted to gather everyone's wisdom to create a cultivation method that could transform the endless beasts in the world into demonic chi and turn them into demonic race. After coming to a consensus, Lei Jiuxiao gestured to everyone. With a single thought, his consciousness entered the virtual world and appeared in a pitch-black and boundless void. After a while, his spiritual consciousness was slightly touched. 18 strands of soul awareness appeared in his senses one after another. When Lei Jiuxiao sensed these 18 strands of spiritual awareness, a network of spiritual awareness was established between these 18 strands of spiritual awareness, forming a virtual spiritual awareness space. After thousands of years of development, The technology to build a network of spiritual awareness had improved many times compared to when this virtual world had just been formed. All kinds of standards and procedures had long been established. If the construction of this spiritual awareness space came out of thin air, it would naturally be extremely complicated and troublesome. But with the help of the various standards and procedures, only a few thoughts were needed to determine some variables. Although it was still difficult to almost impossible for ordinary people for a powerful existence like Lei Jiuxiao, it was not the slightest pressure. With the establishment of this spiritual knowledge space, Taoist Tai Long and the others appeared in this spiritual knowledge space. The structure of the spiritual sense space was similar to the structure of the ancestral demon hall in the untainted world, but it was more majestic, vast, and magnificent. The image of the spiritual sense space was unlimited as long as the spiritual sense could support it. Naturally, it would not be limited by the environment of the untainted world. It could completely replicate Lei Jiuxiao's idea and make it perfect. "Everyone, please." Lei Jiuxiao called out to everyone. Then he sat on the throne corresponding to the ancestral demon hall. Taoist Tai Long and the others also gestured to each other and sat on their respective thrones. As they sat down, in the untainted world, in the ancestral demon hall, except for Lei Jiuxiao, the bodies of Taoist Tai Long and the others, which were formed by the condensation of various kinds of primordial qi, suddenly collapsed. However, the primordial qi did not dissipate out of the ancestral demon hall. Instead, it constantly circulated and changed inside the hall, as if it wanted to evolve into various mysterious existences. The bodies of Taoist Tai Long and the others collapsed because they had already dispersed their thoughts. The reason why the various primordial qi that originally formed the bodies of Taoist Tai Long and the others had such a change was because the primordial qi had been infiltrated by the thoughts of the powerful existences at the peak of the perfected immortal realm. There was a trace of mysterious change, and it already had a completely different quality from the primordial qi in the outside world. It had become an independent entity with some kind of indistinct instinct. Naturally, it would not leave the hall and mix with the primordial qi in the outside world. It was naturally not an easy task to create a cultivation method that allowed all the beasts in the world to cultivate and transform their essence into the demon clan. It could even be said that it was 100 times more difficult and complicated than creating the cultivation method for Lei Jiuxiao to create the body of Feng Tianzi. Even if he and the 18 powerful existences at the peak of the perfected immortal realm gathered together, he was not confident that he could create the cultivation method in a short period of time. However, Lei Jiuxiao's concept of time was also calculated in thousands of years. It was precisely because he did not know how long it would take to create this mysterious cultivation method that he decided to create it in the virtual world, where time could be sped up by 10 times and gather everyone's strength to create the cultivation method. The difficulty of creating a cultivation method in the virtual world was not much different from that in the outside world. But after all, it was 10 times more time. For those who were anxious to see the demon clan flourish, there was naturally no need to say what choice they would make. In the spiritual sense network that Lei Jiuxiao and Taoist Tai Long and the others had constructed, strange beasts appeared out of thin air in the hall one after another. Among them were Zhao Feng, Kuei Niu, Fu Ying, Ho Qi, and the others. Qi, filthy clouds, all sorts of strange beasts that Lei Jiuxiao had never seen or heard of before. These strange beasts came from the spiritual senses of Lei Jiuxiao and Taoist Tai Long and the others. However, they did not come from their memories. It was naturally impossible to create a cultivation method that could turn strange beasts into demons without real strange beasts to study and deduce. Taoist Tai Long and the others were focused on cultivation. Even if they had some understanding of some strange beasts, it was impossible for them to remember all the details of these strange beasts. Naturally, it was impossible for them to display them through their spiritual senses. These strange beasts actually came from this boundless virtual world. Lei Jiuxiao, Taoist Tai Long, and the others had used their powerful telepathic senses to project the strange beast that existed within a huge range around their bodies in the virtual world into this spiritual sense space. When Luo Fan first created this virtual world, he passed down a spell that allowed all living beings in the world to enter and leave this virtual world. Even living beings without complete spiritual senses and intelligence could enter this virtual world based on their instincts, let alone the countless strange beasts that covered the primordial world. These strange beasts did not have complete intelligence and could not have much autonomy in this virtual world. However, it was precisely because of this that their projections in this virtual world were no different from those in the primordial world. Instead, it was more useful for Lei Jiuxiao and the others to use as reference. Chapter 514. In the blink of an eye, 1,000 years had passed in the primordial world. During these 1,000 years, there had been even more changes in the primordial world. An existence that called itself the Demon Clan began to emerge in the primordial world. These Demon Clan were formed by some of the countless beasts in the world who had cultivated into human form by chance. They possessed all sorts of unfathomable abilities that only cultivators possessed. The appearance of these Demon Clan was actually not very conspicuous in the primordial world, and it did not attract too much attention from other living beings. After all, there were countless Khanate beast clans in the primordial world, and each of them had countless Khanate beast clans. In this way, the number of Khanate beasts in the primordial world had even reached an indescribable level. Under these circumstances, some of the Khanate beasts had been enlightened by chance and knew how to cultivate. They had cultivated into a humanoid form similar to the Khanate Tao body and stepped onto the path of cultivation. What was strange about that? Therefore, even though these Khanate beasts that had stepped onto the path of cultivation called themselves the Demon Clan, it was not enough to attract too much attention. Of course, there were still many knowledgeable and extremely sensitive people in the primordial world. However, even if these existences existed, there were still very few of them. Moreover, they all possessed great abilities, and, at the very least, they stood at the peak of the primordial world. They even felt that they did not have enough time to cultivate. So how could they have the time to pay attention to the appearance of the Demon Clan that they thought was insignificant? As a result, even though the demon race had already made a name for themselves in the primordial world and was truly known by many cultivators, they were only treated as an ordinary cultivator race. They were only seen as an existence of the same nature as the many post-celestial beings that had ascended from Luo Fan's lesser Kiliacosm. 1,000 years was equivalent to 10,000 years in the virtual world. Compared to the entire primordial world and the almost endless lifespans of many cultivators, this period of time was nothing. However, it was already enough for any cultivator to do many things that seemed impossible in the past. For example, in a virtual world, Lei Jiuxiao, Daoist Tai Long, and the others had practically never stopped for the past 10,000 years, and they had been concentrating their minds on doing that one thing at every moment. At this moment, in the spiritual sense space that Lei Jiuxiao had created, the originally endless Khanate beasts that encompassed almost every species in the primordial world had completely disappeared. In their place was a huge, extremely ordinary-looking humanoid figure. Meanwhile, Lei Jiuxiao and the others were staring at the phantom with burning eyes. In fact, this humanoid shadow was extremely solid and real. Judging from its form and quality, it was not much different from a human body condensed from real blood and flesh. The reason why it was called a phantom was because the humanoid figure was in a strange state. Although it was not transparent, under the effect of some extremely profound laws, outsiders could see all the changes in its body even without using any abilities. This included the flow of power within its body, the circulation of its mental will, and the changes of the soul in its sea of consciousness. Everything, as long as it was related to cultivation, was revealed without any concealment. This was clearly not something that a real living being could possess. Only a simple phantom that demonstrated a cultivation method could possess this. At this moment, An incomparably complex and mysterious transformation was taking place within the body of this illusory human figure. A cultivation method that seemed extremely simple, but contained boundless mysteries that seemed to conform to the unfathomable and supreme great Tao slowly circulated within his body. Of course, this cultivation method was not just about the flow of power. It also required the coordination of one's mental will, the circulation of a certain mental cultivation method, and even the coordination of the external environment. It was not just about circulating the power within one's body according to a certain path. As the cultivation method circulated, the essence of the sun and moon in the surroundings slowly seeped into the humanoid figure's orifices through an extremely subtle and profound method. It was gradually absorbed into its body, and through some complicated and profound changes, an extremely weak strand of demonic chi was formed within its body. After this strand of demonic chi was formed, it flowed through its Naiwan palace and its sea of consciousness, and a strand of it seeped into the humanoid figure's extremely blurry and turbid soul. It brought out strands of impurities, causing the soul to become slightly purer and almost undetectable. The impurities that were brought out from the soul also strengthened the demonic chi slightly, causing the demonic chi to become a little more resilient after flowing through the soul. It flowed back into the humanoid figure's body and gradually accumulated in various parts of its body, turning into 129,600 faintly discernible cyclones that were distributed inside and outside of its body. Those 129,600 cyclones corresponded to the 129,600 hidden or obvious orifices on the body of this born Taoism aptitude. This cultivation method was clearly the one that Lei, Jiuxiao, and the dozen or so others had created over the course of 10,000 years. They had even delayed their own cultivation to create it. It was the foundation that allowed all beasts in the world to cultivate and turn into demons. The 129,600 cyclones that appeared inside and outside of the humanoid figure's body could be said to be the most essential and profound part of this foundational cultivation method. The positions of these 129,600 cyclones were extremely exquisite, and they were in accordance with the great Tao of heaven and earth, as well as the truths of the universe. As long as one cultivated according to this cultivation method, there was no need to understand the positions of these 129,600 cyclones. The demonic power would naturally be distributed in the most precise, most perfect, and most profound positions. And as one's cultivation deepened, these 129,600 cyclones would continue to grow stronger and stronger. Finally, at a certain moment, the primordial world would respond, and these cyclones would turn from nothingness into reality. In the end, they would completely solidify and turn into 129,600 orifices. When that time came, no matter what form the cultivator who cultivated this cultivation method originally had, even if he was the size of a speck of dust, he would be able to directly transform into a human form. His size would also grow to the size of an ordinary born Taoism aptitude. Of course, this was only the effect of these 129,600 cyclones. Even after cultivating such a body, this creature could not be called a demon clan. A true demon needed a complete spiritual consciousness, a considerable amount of intelligence, and a future of cultivation. And this required the originally turbid and blurry soul to become clear. Compared to the formation of the 129,600 orifices, this was almost like defying the heavens and changing one's fate. It was even more complicated and difficult. Chapter 5:15. Lei Jiuxiao and the others all smiled and relaxed as they watched the changes in the illusory humanoid figure. 10,000 years of incessant thinking and operating their spiritual senses was definitely not an easy task for the people present. At this moment, seeing that everything had reached their expected goal, they were naturally very relaxed. It's finally done. Once this demonic art is completed, the number of demonic beasts will increase exponentially. The foundation is set. Late Jiu Xiao smiled. As he spoke, he made a grabbing motion, and the illusory humanoid figure turned into a thick book in a flash. Countless characters, patterns, runes, and talismans flashed across the air. After hovering around the book for countless times, they abruptly rushed into the book, causing the four extremely complicated characters of Pangu to appear on the cover of the book, Basic Spirit Art. After the book was formed, it shook slightly and split into 19 similar books before scattering in all directions. In the blink of an eye, they had already landed in front of everyone, including Lei Jiuxiao. Everyone clearly knew what Lei Jiuxiao meant. Without any hesitation, they casually waved their hands and put away the basic demonic art in front of them with their respective divine abilities. After greeting Lei Jiuxiao, they gradually faded and disappeared from the spiritual sense space. Lei Jiuxiao smiled slightly when he saw everyone leave. He lifted a step, and the entire spiritual sense space slowly collapsed. By the time he walked out of the door, the spiritual sense space had already disappeared without a trace. Lei Jiuxiao's consciousness also returned to his body in the virtual world. With another shake, the body in the virtual world suddenly collapsed and turned into nothingness. His consciousness directly crossed the boundary between virtual and real, returning to his body in the ancestral demon palace. As his consciousness returned, Lei Jiuxiao's eyes, which had been closed for 1,000 years, slowly opened. In an instant, there seemed to be a soundless rumble of thunder. 2 bolts of lightning suddenly shot out from Lei Jiuxiao's eyes, streaking across the void and disappearing in a flash. It was as if they would forever remain in the world. Compared to 1,000 years ago, the fixed structure of the ancestral demon palace was not much different. It was just like when it was first built. However, the various types of yuan qi that were filled with it had undergone a tremendous change. Above the hall, all kinds of mysterious yuan qi condensed into 18 regions, clearly dividing the upper half of the hall. These 18 regions were like 18 heavens and 18 worlds. Amidst the tumbling of the yuan qi, it formed 18 completely different but self-contained systems, forming a whole. The scenes displayed were interwoven in one place, as complex and mysterious as the real heaven and earth with different rules. These 18 regions were formed by the yuan qi condensed from the will projections of Taoist Tai Long and the others after 1,000 years of evolution. The peak of the realm of true immortality was not a very profound realm in the entire cultivation realm. Above it were the realm of golden immortal, the realm of primordial unity, the realm of zenith heaven, and even the realm of chaotic prime. It seemed that the realm of true immortality was just the beginning of cultivation. However, that was only from a relative perspective. From an absolute perspective, the realm of true immortality was already an extremely profound realm. Living beings at this level had already escaped the cycle of life and death, and it was even to the extent that their souls and thoughts were already capable of conforming to some sort of supreme law of the Grand Tao. They possessed countless unbelievable divine abilities and unimaginable might. Such an existence only needed a single thought to move mountains and overturn the seas, defy the heavens, and change fate. The will of such an existence was attached to the yuan qi and condensed the yuan qi into its body. It was imaginable how great the changes to the yuan qi that had condensed into its body would be. After the wills of Taoist Tai Long and the others left, the yuan qi underwent a mysterious change and was about to evolve into a mysterious existence. If it was in another place where there was no concealment, under the endless yuan qi of the world, the mystery contained in the yuan qi would not be maintained for too long. At most, it would collapse and dissipate after a few years, causing the yuan qi to turn back into ordinary yuan qi and fuse with the endless yuan qi of the world. There would no longer be anything special about it. However, the actual situation was not like that. Because of the existence of the ancestral demon hall, The Yuan Qi was completely isolated from the outside world, so it was free from the impact of the Yuan Qi from the outside world. In this hall, the Yuan Qi stimulated and promoted each other, causing the mysterious force that was formed by the will of the true immortal realm to grow. This state lasted for 1,000 years. After 1,000 years of stimulation and promotion, today, the Yuan Qi had truly formed and transformed into 18 regions, forming 18 illusory regions. These 18 regions contain a trace of the Tao that Taoist Tai Long and the others had cultivated throughout their lives, and contained a little bit of the Tao state of their cultivation techniques. It could be said that if a living being with exceptional aptitude could meditate and comprehend these 18 regions, they would be able to comprehend 18 types of cultivation techniques through them. Although these 18 types of cultivation techniques could not be compared to the Tao that Taoist Tai Long and the others cultivated, and were even worlds apart in terms of completeness, they were part of the supreme cultivation techniques that allowed Taoist Tai Long and the others to stand out among the billions of living beings in the primordial world and achieve their current peak status. Its mystery was definitely not ordinary. It was not difficult for an ordinary living being to achieve Tao. Lei Jiuxiao raised his head slightly and saw the 18 regions above the ancestral demon palace. He instantly understood the mystery of these regions. Indeed, every existence that can stand above all living beings must not be underestimated. Looking at the scene above, such a thought flashed across Lei Jiuxiao's mind. With Lei Jiuxiao's intelligence, he understood the plan of Taoist Tai Long and the others after understanding the mystery of the 18 regions. They clearly wanted to leave an indelible mark in the ancestral demon palace, so that all living beings who came here in the future would know their status in the demon clan, so as to avoid the hidden danger of being casually thrown away by Lei Jiuxiao. In the beginning, Taoist Tai Long and the others did not participate in the matter of the demon clan voluntarily. They were forced by Lei Jiuxiao and had no choice but to do so. However, once they decided to join, they would definitely go all out and use all means to protect their own interests. They had to use all kinds of methods to prevent being used as stepping stones and thrown away after using them. That was why they had this plan. Chapter 516. With a single thought from Lei Jiuxiao, a figure that exuded boundless majesty like a king who controlled the world walked out of his body and appeared right next to him. The figure looked exactly the same as Lei Jiuxiao, but if they didn't appear in the same place, it would be difficult for anyone to connect them and think that they were the same person. At that moment, the figure stood to the side while Lei Jiuxiao sat on the throne. However, the feeling he gave off was that he was even more dignified and had the aura of a king. His status was even higher. The feeling of dislocation was unimaginably profound. The figure was naturally the lightning son of heaven's clone that Lei Jiuxiao had cultivated. The clone had been in the primordial world for 1,000 years, and the virtual world for 10,000 years. It had been hidden in Lei Jiuxiao's sea of consciousness, constantly using the various mysteries in Lei Jiuxiao's sea of consciousness to refine and improve itself. At that moment, although his cultivation level hadn't improved much compared to 1,000 years ago, his control over the various powers he possessed was thousands of times stronger than 1,000 years ago. It could be said that the current lightning son of heaven's clone was at least 100 times stronger than 1,000 years ago. The lightning son of heaven's clone was a part of Lei Jiuxiao, so he naturally didn't need Lei Jiuxiao's orders. After appearing, he took a step forward and disappeared from the ancestral demon palace. When he reappeared, he was already somewhere in the middle of the mountain range. The Yuan Qi in this area wasn't as dense as other areas, but the type of Yuan Qi was more special. It was more harmonious and easier to absorb and fuse. When a lightning son of heaven arrived above this area, he saw waves of demonic aura flickering below. Clearly, there were many demons of average cultivation cultivating below. When a lightning son of heaven's clone appeared, there was an indescribable aura of a king that pressed down from the sky. It directly pressed down on the area within a radius of 10,000 kilometers where the demon clan was located. Following the pressure of this imposing aura, the originally indistinct demonic aura suddenly trembled and skyrocketed dozens of times before disappearing without a trace in an instant. Following that, a wave of demonic aura shot into the sky from the top of the mountain, shooting towards the lightning sun of heaven's clone. The demonic aura was extremely condensed and pure, like a crystal-clear black jade. When it arrived dozens of meters away from the lightning sun of heaven's clone, it suddenly condensed into a figure. It was the Wind King. Compared to 1,000 years ago, this Wind King had undergone a huge change. The accumulation of demonic energy in his body was more than 100 times stronger than 1,000 years ago. Although his cultivation level did not increase by much and was still at the loose immortal realm, the harmonious feeling that his body gave off was enough to make anyone who saw him feel the fine control he had over his own demonic energy. This little demon greets ancestor. When the Wind King saw the Son of Lightning, it did not dare to be slow. It knelt in the void several hundred feet away. The lightning son of heaven's clone had appeared before the Wind Beckoning King had become a demon. The Wind Beckoning King naturally recognized it and knew of its relationship with Lei Jiuxiao, which was why he addressed it as such. The doppelganger of the Son of Thunder didn't wake him up. He only said, "How many demons have been born in 1,000 years?" His words were ordinary and his tone was indifferent, but it was filled with an indescribable pressure. Anyone who heard this voice would feel as if they were being questioned by the heavens. No matter how secretive the question was, they couldn't hide it. Yes, the Wind Beckoning Monarch didn't dare to hesitate and acknowledged. Then he told the clone of the Son of Thunder about the results of his hard work over the past 1,000 years, including how many demons he had nurtured, the cultivation of each demon, how he had chosen this place as a settlement, and how he had dealt with the other demons who had yet to become demons. He did not leave out any details. The lightning son of heaven's expression did not change at all after hearing the Wind Summoning Monarch's explanation. At the same time, he gained a better understanding of the Wind Beckoning King's achievements over the past 1,000 years. Although it was easy for the Wind Beckoning King to become a demon, it was actually very easy to create a demon. In fact, the reason why the Wind Beckoning King could become a demon so easily was because he was a king of the Wind Beckoning race. The more ordinary one's mind was, the less important it was. In fact, if the person who imparted the cultivation technique to the Wind Beckoning body was not like Lei Jiuxiao, and the cultivation technique was created by Lei Jiuxiao using the Wind Beckoning King's body as his main body, the difficulty of the Wind Beckoning King becoming a demon would increase by at least 10,000 times. The time needed would also increase by 10,000 times. It would definitely not be as easy as before. Even the Wind Beckoning King was like that, let alone the ordinary Wind Beckoning race. In the past 1,000 years, there were only 13 existences in the entire Wind Beckoning race that had truly broken through the limits of their race and become demons. Among them was even the number one demon in the primordial world, the Wind Beckoning King. As for the others, the Wind Beckoning King had searched more than 10 Wind Beckoning races and found more than 500 of his kind with the potential to become demons. They either could not break through their life essence for a long time, or they went berserk. Even their simple spiritual consciousness collapsed and died, and no more demons were born. The reason why the Demon Clan chose this location to settle down was because of the geographical factors that made the Yuan Qi abnormally smooth and could be easily converted into demonic energy for the Demon Clan to cultivate. The most important reason was that they could see the location of the ancestral demon palace from afar. The Wind Beckoning King had an indescribable reverence and yearning for the ancestral demon hall. That reverence made him not dare to let the newly born demons stay too close to the ancestral demon hall, in case the demons desecrated the ancestral demon hall. That yearning made him unwilling to see the ancestral demon hall. That was why this area was chosen. The lightning son of heaven's clone understood the changes and nodded. Summon all the demons. The Wind Beckoning King did not dare to hesitate and responded. He stood up and turned to the ground, opening his mouth and letting out a low but dignified roar. The low roar was extremely penetrating. It even caused the essence chi in the void to tremble violently, producing a huge ripple that could be seen with the naked eye. With the roar, the dozen or so demonic auras below shook slightly. They left their original positions and shot towards the wind-beckoning king. Their cultivation levels were far inferior to the wind-beckoning kings. They could not even cultivate to the realm of turning their bodies into light. Therefore, their figures could still be seen through the light. Some of them were fast, and some were slow. The density of the demonic aura around them was also thick and thin. That was for sure. Apart from that, their appearances were also extremely strange, all different from one another. Among them, some had human bodies and pig heads. Some had human heads and pig bodies. Some had human bodies but pig trotters. Some had huge ears, and some had huge tails. Seeing the appearances of the demons, the lightning son of heaven's clone finally understood why the wind-beckoning king did not bring them out previously. Their appearances were indeed a little embarrassing. Chapter 517. Creation returned to 5K. The aura of the lightning emperor's clone was as deep as the ocean. It was naturally not something that the demons who had yet to cultivate a complete human body could resist. Although the demons were not very intelligent in front of the lightning emperor's clone, they knew how to react without the Windcaller King's instructions. The lightning emperor's clone scanned the demons and knew their cultivation level. Although he was disappointed, he knew that it was normal and was not surprised. He said, "It's passable. There's a basic cultivation technique here that could be used with the wind-beckoning body." As he said that, he pointed casually and a bolt of lightning charged out of his hand. It gathered in the void and turned into a book that flickered with lightning in the blink of an eye, landing in the Windcaller King's hand. That was the basic demonic technique that Lei Jiuxiao and the others had spent 10,000 years in the virtual world to cultivate. The Windcaller King's eyes lit up when he touched the book. Although he had not truly read the contents of the book, it must be extremely profound since it was given by the patriarch. He could tell from the cultivation technique of the wind-beckoning body that he had obtained back then. He knelt down immediately and said gratefully, "Thank you for the technique, Patriarch." The other demons seemed to have woken up from a dream when they saw the Windcaller King's performance. They kowtowed continuously and shouted along with the Windcaller King. The Lightning Emperor's clone's expression was cold, and his eyes flickered. This technique is the foundation of the demon race's cultivation and also the source. Don't stay here anymore. Find all the demons you can find and pass this technique down. Don't neglect it. I understand. I won't let you down, Patriarch. The Windcaller King knew that it was meant for him the moment he heard that. His expression turned solemn, and he did not dare to think too much, shouting loudly right away. It seemed like even if the lightning son of heaven's clone asked him to die immediately, he would not hesitate. The lightning emperor's clone acknowledged softly when he saw that. He turned around and took a step forward, disappearing before the Windcaller King. The wind-beckoning king only stood up carefully after he disappeared for a long time. The other demons remained kneeling in the air, not daring to move. Clearly, they had yet to recover from the powerful aura released by the lightning son of heaven's clone. This cultivation technique was bestowed by the old ancestor. All of you must work hard in cultivating it. Do not slack off. Your achievements in the future will depend on your hard work, the wind-beckoning king said to the few of them. Understand, those demons had average intelligence, but they respected and trusted the wind-beckoning monarch who had guided them to become demons. Whatever the wind-beckoning monarch said, they would do. They didn't need to spend too much effort to explain. The wind-summoning king naturally knew that the answer from these little demons did not mean that they understood what he said. He casually waved his hand, and his body swayed. He turned into a ray of light and descended with these few demons. Soon, they landed in the cave that he lived in for the past 1,000 years. After more than half a day, joyous cheers could be heard from within the cave. Following that, waves of demonic chi soared into the sky and scattered in all directions, dispersing to the places where the demonic chi had been before. After a while, the wind-summoning king turned into a ray of black light and soared into the sky, heading into the distance. Over the past 1,000 years, although the demons did not appear everywhere like a geyser, they had appeared in the primordial world after all. As for the reason for their appearance, it was not naturally formed. The connate beasts comprehended it naturally, and not all of them were guided by the wind-summoning king. Even if the wind-summoning king wanted to guide them, he could not do it. After all, he only had a cultivation technique for the wind-summoning body. Even for the wind-summoning race, it was only an extremely small chance of guiding them to become demons, let alone other races. The birth of those demons was caused by Lei, Jiuxiao, and the others. If all living beings in the primordial world had intelligence, they could control it themselves. If they only had life and spiritual consciousness, they would naturally be attracted by the virtual world. They would naturally receive the method to enter the virtual world that Luo Fan had sent into the netherworld and leave a mental projection avatar in the virtual world. It was also because of this that there were so many beasts in the virtual world. Back then, Lei Jiuxiao and the others had chosen these beasts to study. They wanted to deduce the cultivation technique that all beasts could cultivate and become demons. Naturally, most beasts had to use it. Moreover, in the process of deduction and creation, there would naturally be some imperfections. However, there were still many mysteries left in the bodies of these beasts that could turn specific beasts into demons. Through the circulation of the virtual world, these remnants allowed the beasts in the primordial world to naturally comprehend some methods to become demons through some mysterious communication between the beasts in the virtual world and their main bodies. These methods to become demons were extremely imperfect, and most of them had hidden dangers. There were even many counterproductive effects. Even the chances of the beasts becoming demons were extremely small. However, the huge number of beasts that could not be described with numbers was still there. Those beasts were talented. Some of them had extremely rich accumulations and had extremely good opportunities. They had the possibility of becoming demons. As a result, the appearance of the demon race in the past 1,000 years had allowed all living beings in the primordial world to truly know about the demon race. Because there were very few members of the demon race, and it was extremely difficult for them to achieve anything, the demon race naturally banded together. As long as there was a chance, they would try their best to maintain a friendly attitude towards other demon races and try their best to communicate with as many demon races as possible. As a result, the wind-beckoning king knew the location of many demons in the past 1,000 years. Moreover, because he was the #1 demon in the primordial world, his status among the demons was rather high. It was perfect for him to impart demonic techniques to others. In Luo Fan's previous life on Earth, there was a theory that between any two people on a planet, even if they were separated by half a planet, even if it was a beggar at the bottom of a country's society and the head of another country, they could still contact each other through 25 people. To be more specific, if a person, no matter who he was or what his identity was, wanted to get to know any other person on this planet, he only needed to ask a friend of a friend to do it 25 times at most to achieve his goal. Whether this theory was true or false depended on the person's opinion. However, regardless of whether it was true or false, this theory showed how close the connection between intelligent living beings was and how fast the news spread. Although the primordial world was countless times larger than Earth, it followed similar rules. However, the number of 25 was much larger. Therefore, the spread of demonic techniques did not need too many beginnings. As long as the wind-beckoning king was the only one, it would slowly spread to all the demons in the primordial world. There was no need for Lei Jiuxiao and the others to personally teach them one by one. Lei Jiuxiao did not know about the theory of the 25 people in Luo Fan's previous life. However, with his experience and the knowledge he had accumulated after reincarnating in Luo Fan's spirit space for tens of millions of years, he had similar knowledge. Therefore, after the lightning son of heaven's clone handed the matter of imparting techniques to the wind-beckoning king, he did not care about it anymore. With the help of the flying mystical ability brought by the lightning son of heaven's clone, he turned into a ray of light and crossed hundreds of millions of kilometers at an unimaginable speed. Not long after, he traversed hundreds of millions of kilometers and arrived at a sea of clouds in the Linghai Prefecture. The Sea of Clouds covered an area of more than 30 million kilometers. It covered the sky and the earth. Although there was light shining through the Sea of Clouds and onto the ground below, it made the area within 30 million kilometers extremely dark, as if it was eternal dusk. The lightning son of heaven's clone hovered in the void and looked up. He no longer held back anything in the Sea of Clouds. He had completely lifted the veil that covered his true appearance. The Sea of Clouds was about 80,000 kilometers above the ground. It was still thousands of kilometers away from the astral wind, lightning, and fire layer above. However, the Sea of Clouds was extremely thick. It almost brushed past the astral wind, lightning, and fire layer. As it surged, it would collide with the astral wind, lightning, and fire layer, causing the astral wind, lightning, and fire to react violently. Countless astral wind, lightning, and fire fell from it and struck the Sea of Clouds. From time to time, roars that sounded like strong winds could be heard from the Sea of Clouds. There were tens of thousands of living beings living in the Sea of Clouds. These living beings all belonged to the same race, the Nether Cloud. The Nether Cloud was one of the 6 connate wind beasts. It was also a mutated beast that Lei Jiuxiao needed to create the wind son of heaven's cultivation technique. The lightning son of heaven's clone raised his hand and grabbed at the air. As the Sea of Clouds surged, a mutated beast that was hundreds of meters wide slowly floated out of the Sea of Clouds as if it had been grabbed by a giant invisible hand. The mutated beast looked extremely strange. It was like a white cloud that surged in the void. Its body constantly changed shape, making it impossible to see its head, body, or limbs. The lightning son of heaven's clone remained calm and expressionless. With a wave of his hand, the mutated beast appeared in front of him. The mutated beast roared crazily. Its voice was like a grade 12 gale, shaking the world. Even the void seemed to tremble. The lightning son of heaven's clone was the son of heaven. His words were the law, so he naturally wouldn't say much. However, with a frown, the aura of a ruler around him increased by 10,000 times, spreading out in all directions. With this aura, the lightning son of heaven's clone's body, which was less than 3 meters tall, seemed even more majestic and vast than the Sea of Clouds that was 15 million kilometers wide. With this aura, the roars in the Sea of Clouds instantly disappeared. Even the rate at which the Sea of Clouds surged seemed to slow down by countless times, as if it was about to stop. The mutated beast was a Nether Cloud King. It was the king of one of the tens of thousands of nether clouds in the Sea of Clouds. It was much more intelligent than ordinary nether clouds. Similar to the wind-beckoning king, the Nether Cloud King was also the king of a tribe, but compared to the lightning son of heaven, its aura was like comparing a firefly to the bright moon. Although the lightning son of heaven's clone did not suppress it with his aura, he instantly knew how great the difference between them was. Unlike the wind-beckoning king, the Nether Cloud King was more adaptable. When it sensed the oppressive aura, it turned around and withdrew its cloud-like body. Its body shrank 100 times, and it turned into a strange existence that looked like a bat without wings, with extremely large eyes, extremely small ears, and an extremely wide mouth. This was the true body of the Nether Cloud. The cloud-like body from before was formed by the cloud transformation divine wind that the Nether Cloud King was born with. It had all kinds of unbelievable power. "Follow me," the lightning son of heaven's clone said lightly. The Nether Cloud King's body trembled, and its eyes revealed a look of submission as it nodded continuously. The lightning son of heaven's clone turned around and turned into a ray of light that continued to fly into the distance. The Nether Cloud King's body spewed out wisps of cloud gas that turned into the void and disappeared instantly. When it reappeared, it was already on a white cloud hundreds of thousands of miles away. In a flash, it went to another cloud through some unbelievable method. Using this mysterious method, It tried its best to follow behind the lightning son of Heaven's clone. Looking at its speed, it was not much slower than the lightning son of Heaven's clone. Leaping and flying through the clouds through some sort of inconceivable method was a mysterious power brought about by the cloud transformation divine wind. The cloud formed by the cloud transformation divine wind was not an ordinary cloud, but a type of mica. It had completely fused with the void and was closely connected to the void of the primordial world. It also had a mysterious connection with the clouds within a certain range. Using this mysterious connection, it could shuttle between the clouds as if it was teleporting. The lightning son of Heaven's clone did not stop to wait for the Nether Cloud King. Even though the Nether Cloud King was slower than him, he had no intention of bringing the Nether Cloud King along. Capturing the Nether Cloud King was another matter, but since the Nether Cloud King had already submitted, he naturally could not bring it along. The Emperor was not a driver. How could the Emperor use his own strength to bring his subjects along? A few days later, the lightning son of Heaven's clone followed the 5 beasts back to the ancestral demon palace. The 5 beasts were much slower than the lightning son of Heaven's clone. Even the fastest Nether Cloud King needed several hours to arrive after the lightning son of Heaven's clone arrived at the ancestral demon palace. As for the slowest one, Gong, it would take several days to arrive. For the past few days, Lei Jiuxiao had been resting in the hall with his eyes closed, quietly comprehending the various gains he had gained in the 10,000 years in the virtual world. During those 10,000 years, although he did not cultivate, he had been constantly mobilizing his own wisdom and working hard to deduce various cultivation methods. This was another form of cultivation for him, who had just broken through the itinerant immortal realm and become a perfected immortal realm. It allowed him to master this new power and a new body faster. In the 10,000 years, the time flow in the virtual world was 10 times faster than in the primordial world. His cultivation realm and dharma power had not improved much, but his mastery of the perfected immortal realm was incomparable to before. The increase in his strength was also thousands of times greater than before. In the past few days, he had been consolidating the progress he had made in the past 10,000 years. When the lightning son of Heaven's clone returned, Lei Jiuxiao opened his eyes and looked at it. The experience of the lightning son of Heaven's clone in the past few days had been transmitted to his mind through some mysterious and unbelievable channel. He did not need to ask. With a slight thought, the lightning son of Heaven's clone walked into his body in a few steps and returned to his sea of consciousness. Although this lightning son of Heaven's clone is my clone, it has been affected by the cultivation method of the lightning son of Heaven's body. Its character is more like the son of heaven. Even I can't change it. I have to use it carefully. Such a thought flashed through Lei Jiuxiao's mind. A cultivation method that can affect the mind and character of a cultivator can't be considered a top cultivation method. I want to create a cultivation method for the body of Heaven's wind, so I must avoid this as much as possible. Then he thought again. Creating a cultivation method for the body of Heaven's wind was the fundamental purpose of Lei Jiuxiao capturing the Wind King to study. The birth of the demon race was an accident. Although 1,000 years had passed since then, Lei Jiuxiao had not changed his mind. Of course, it was impossible for him to change his mind. For an existence like Lei Jiuxiao, who had already attained the earthly immortal Tao fruit and understood his own Tao, he would either not make a decision, or once he made a decision, he would do his best to complete it. Moreover, he faintly felt that creating a cultivation method for the body of Heaven's wind was rather important to his future. Under such circumstances, he would naturally not change his mind. In the past few days, under his control, the lightning son of Heaven's clone had traveled to the other 5 Khanate wind beasts gathering areas in the spirit sea state. He had subdued one of the kings of each Khanate wind beast and made the 5 Khanate wind beasts rush towards the ancestral demon palace. After a few hours, the fastest Nether Cloud King finally sensed it. It shook its body and fell from the cloud, landing in front of the ancestral demon palace. The lightning son of Heaven's clone did not tell it where its destination was, but it left a trace of its aura on it. Following the aura, the Nether Cloud King would not get lost and would naturally come to the ancestral demon palace. The lightning son of Heaven's clone had been kept back into Lei Jiuxiao's sea of consciousness. The Nether Cloud King could not sense the aura of the lightning son of Heaven's clone. For a moment, it was a little hesitant and did not know whether it should step into the hall. Lei Jiuxiao sensed the arrival of the Nether Cloud King. With a casual grab, the Nether Cloud King rushed into the hall without any resistance and landed directly under his throne. When the Nether Cloud King saw Lei Jiuxiao and sensed the uncontrollable power on its body, it instantly understood that the existence in front of it was even more terrifying than the lightning son of heaven. It immediately prostrated itself on the ground to express its submission. Very sensible, not bad. Seeing the Nether Cloud King's performance, Lei Jiuxiao smiled slightly and said, although the Nether Cloud King's intelligence was not as good as ordinary people, it still had some ability to understand. It understood and immediately obeyed. In the 10,000 years in the virtual world, Lei Jiuxiao had long studied the structure of the 6 Khanate wind beasts. The Khanate wind beasts were naturally among the countless beasts in the prehistoric world. To create a method that all beasts could cultivate to become a demon, it was naturally impossible to bypass it.